Plus, Ultra presents The Grey Lodge, Friday Night Gnostic Mass, Aeon of Convergent Timelines, Arc Null. I am Jin the fucking Ninja. I'm still the ninja, even though it's not in my name. I'm having my character, Jin, is inherently stable. So I thought actually using that character would lend itself to a bit of stability, a bit of mental and spiritual fortitude, you could say. So obviously, we have a stable of amazing co-hosts. Of course, Matt Murrah, number one, our like little brother, but not really. Amazing Kabbalah, tarot, astrology. Check him out. Check out his website, and also the website that he built for us at or not at. I'm sorry, www the true TRVE Greylodge.com. Thank you to brother Matt Murrah for all the hard work you do. And also, he runs our YouTube. So these are recorded on X, the 10 and the 11, transcending time and space, coming together in synthesis, hopefully. Matt runs that and he uploads it very honestly and regularly. And so thank you so much, Matt. It wouldn't have happened without him. Also to our Frater Dark Cell Academia, Solar Exile. Thank you so much for coming last week, and also your presence always in the lodge is always appreciated, always hilarious, and just think you're a great dude. The Branch, of course, Joshua, my brother, Joshua the Branch. What can I say about him? Also my brother, also think he's great. Also appreciate him and think that my show has fundamentally changed, and I have fundamentally changed because of those three people. But it's also like when we've added like Mike. Monty's always been in and out, but Monty's always part of it. So I'll shout him out too, of course. Monty Carlo, our other co-host, our other brother in the lodge, and thank you so much for coming. Or thank you to Monty for holding it down when I was away that week, and also thank you to Monty for just being cool and a homie, and appreciate him. And thank him for coming to the spaces. I kind of added him without his explicit consent, but I think he was game, and he's always shown that he wants to be, true homie, true Naga. And of course, Mike, which I'll let Mike introduce himself, but I also want to shout out first Seth, Bibliomancer, who Seth is my little Naga, who pushing me in the wild, weird ways of ACP and like Haas and all this other stuff. So interesting. Greatly like Seth, and he's a great dude. I don't always know. Sometimes I'm like the lost uncle amidst the smoke, you could say. Um, and then Mike, of course, astrology, just all around esoterica. I think you've been a great sport, Mike. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate that you've been flexible. And yeah, when you come, I know it's going to be like a really interesting and amazing dialogue, just like with all the other brothers. But of course, I add people for a reason. It's not like it's all random, but sometimes you have to see where it goes, right? And it's a flexible space. So I'll just say before I let Mike introduce himself, I'll do a quick room shout out. So we've got Avi, of course, our Dakini of the Lodge, one of them. Bull Brave Free, appreciate it. You are always valued, always seen, and very much part of the magical working that this is, part of the circle. So thank you so much for coming. Bicky, I'll never mispronounce your name again. My redacted. That's just give me your nickname for the lodge. My redacted vampire. So everybody can follow Bicky. He has a great episode coming out up on my show on Final Fantasy VIII. I know you're all surprised, but hopefully way more to come. Hopefully we can do more Vidya episodes and all of that. Keep that line of inquiry open. I think it's really interesting and looking at metamagic and video games. Obviously, shout out Solar for introducing me to the idea that games are an initiatic process. And so, yeah, that is how I have been thinking of them. So, obviously, Bicky's been my companion in doing that twice now. So yeah, when that episode drops, everybody can check it out. Shout out to Vanessa, who I saw just dropped. But everybody can check out Vanessa on IG. She does tie dye. Everything's tie dye. So thank you so much, Vanessa. Appreciate you for coming. And what else? This is Magic is Real. Everything we say is speculative. Everything, but you can take of it. It's up to you. It's up to your will. It's up to your discernment. Like, is it real? Is it not real? Well, that's up to you to decide. But I personally believe in a framework called the Aeon of the Daughter. I've tried to carry it through as many spaces as I can because I think it's a really important aeonic idea for the new yuga, or for the new aeon. So, and what are aeons? Aeons are also in your mind, and they're also conceptual ideas that help us navigate the aeon as it is. And as I always say, her name is Lamed Mem which also means love is the cause of knowledge, or the heart is the key to the universe, or heaven, really. But the universe is kind of cooler. And yeah, she wields the bow and arrow, and she's the princess of breaking klipas. So hopefully we can also break some klipas. I don't know, but we'll try. We always try. So Mike, if you want to say anything, you can intro yourself, uh, discuss anything you want to discuss, or introduce any topics and plug anything you want to plug if you have anything.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jen. The introduction was better than honestly I can do myself, and you covered it. I do a bunch of different stuff. I study a lot of different esoteric things. I collect art as well, and I do stuff in the market, and that's kind of my whole thing that I have going on generally, and just always doing research on different things that I'm not sharing about um, for the time being. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing, the ballpark that I'm in, and looking forward to the spaces.
Awesome. I also look forward to these spaces because, to be honest, like I was speaking about, I'll call it pre-recording because I'm going to clip our little discussion. But I mean, clip it out. I mean, I'll clip it out so Matt won't upload it to YouTube because he always does, like, my full expression. I feel like the spaces are different from the show in the sense that, like, I'm not a different person. I'm the same person. I carry that through, but in the sense that, but I'm a lot more wilder and a lot freer. And I speak in a stream of consciousness way, and I don't do that on the show because, I mean, I respect all the people who come, obviously, and all the brothers especially, but I tend to use it as a vehicle for my stream of consciousness, kind of like ramblings about, or not ramblings, but I should say like thinking. It's my thinking, my aeonic thinking, and I try and bring that and make it splendorous if possible. Every show is different, but I greatly appreciate it. I think that this has taken me outside of myself the most, probably of any endeavor in my at least my recent life, and certainly past COVID. There we go, Dr. William Birkin, my wonderful brother, who I do love and care about, even though I torment him secretly. I don't really. I really don't. Joshua, do I torment you? Oh, he can't speak. I forgot he's at the theater. Well, anyways, I introduced you, Joshua, and I do torment you. Oh, traitor. I don't think I do. I think I'm really, I think I'm just wild, and I think I just say what I think online. I need to temper it though. I'm not the best. People are hard. People are difficult for me. That's like everybody has their things, right? Like I love business. I love, like, not business per se, but there's something fun about it, and you can't take it too personal. It's only personal when someone that comes at, like, when someone affects your money, right? But it's not really like there's a kind of like ebb and flow to it that I like. And there's a kind of ebb and flow to, like, intellectual pursuits and art as well, because I think those are two, even though they're maybe different things, they're very similar in many ways because you kind of have to put it into practice. Like intellectual, you have to read, you can't just talk about it. Now, of course, if you're French, I had a really weird professor in no, not a professor. He was my what was he? He was my French teacher, but he also taught world history in high school. And he went to Sorbonne, and he never let you forget that he went to Sorbonne. He's like, "Oh, I went to Sorbonne," and he'd always call it, like, my sister and I. He'd always be like, "You guys are just French Canadian," like, literally, he would say that, and I'd be like, and once he threw chalk at me, and I was like, "This is enough." I was like, "I've had enough." Anyway, so we won't get into that story. But the point is, he always would say, I never studied. I always would just kind of think about the classes and the exam and the topics and the book presented, and I never really studied. I would just go write the exam. This is a very French thing. I've met other people who are like French people who are like this. So it kind of surprised me, like international school, all that. Like we were very studious, right? Even me was very studious. Like I was pretty good in that regard. Maybe not a good kid, but a good in studies. So I wasn't bad though. Like not really. A little. Yeah, maybe a little. Okay, anyways, change the subject. Okay, so yeah, French. So yeah, he would do this thing where he's like, I'm not doing it. So for me, it's been like I actually have to think about books. I actually have to read the books. I actually have to dialogue with other people. I actually have to get along with them all the time, or most of the time, at least, or try. And I have to be consistent in my output. So this is also for my show, but this is I found really important for the Grey Lodge. Like, yes, I did take a few month hiatus at the beginning of the year for multiple reasons, but I felt like the output was really strong when we carried it through regular. So, I like carrying it through, and if we can, I like to have it going whether I'm here or not here. Matt told me a really sweet thing. Yes, Mike, please go ahead.
Sure. I just wanted to chime in. There was something you said earlier before, just like with the fluctuation and just with the amount of people coming to the spaces and things like that, and you trying to keep it stable and keeping things going and like creating momentum, things like that. And yeah, there is like definitely you have these cycles, and there's a lot of different cycles that are interacting simultaneously, and especially being in the market, I've noticed it's a lot more intense when you're very close to the market and how people interact and engage on Twitter, especially. But I think what a lot of people that are not like adjacent to the market are not fully aware of is how much these different cycles can affect them, even when it's not like the market. And this is not astrology. This is just cycles. And I've like just recently, like the market dipped again, and it's gone down again, and that always influences engagement and how people show up. It just makes people more withdrawn whenever that happens, and it's more intense when people are close to the market because their like money is directly involved, but it affects everyone. It affects like the entirety of like like I noticed on like Astro Twitter and stuff, like where they're just more aware of energies in general, even if it's not specifically astrological, and they'll talk about it, but they won't even know what it is because it's like just cycles. It's not astrology. So yeah, like I feel like just this it is like good for momentum, but yeah, but there's always the fluctuation in the momentum that you really just can't do anything about.
Well, you said two magic words, right, Mike? I don't know if you did it intentionally, but if you did, good job. But if you didn't, also good job. Flux and cycles. That's that's it. It's the Aeon of Flux. It's the Aeon of the Daughter. Quicksilver surfers, as we always say. I'm not the best at it. I don't think I get up here on a Clydesdale and I'm like, oh, this is what you need to do. I'm the best. No, I don't think that. And I really would never say that. And like sometimes I get a little moralistic and I'm like, don't worship husks. And like I did last week, and I was being very like, I did eat a edible last week. I'm just going to cop to it now. You can always tell. I can always tell too when I listen back because I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that came out of my mouth. But it's all good. It's all good because we're in like consents and we're in synthesis or trying to be. As I said, Tiferet is my hardest Sephira. It's not like some natural inclination I have to be in a group. I'm much more comfortable on my own. But then at the same time, like being in a group, I have realized that actually I miss having like dynamic interaction with people of my own age. Like not just like and I do interact with people of my own age. Like let me be clear, but it's like it's different. It's like, yeah, you can interact with like the workman, and you can be friendly, and you can be nice, and you can be nice with a contractor, and you can be like this, or like other people that in town or whatever. But it's different. We fundamentally kind of lift that mask off, right? When we directly talk about esoterica and magic and aeonic cycles. Like, this is the thing. We were like, Matt was talking about today, like how, or I guess we all did, and we said like how much the timeline has changed from 2 years ago. Like, literally, Matt and I were getting pilloried for being Zionists simply for talking about Kabbalah, sorry, openly. And now every fucking influencer is like, oh, I know Kabbalah, I know this, I know the Nicklandian, Separatic magic. And I'm like, wow, wow, called Jews so many times. And like, who cares really now, because it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, it is funny. It is funny how those cycles of the timeline really work. And I think I said it in a small way. I was trying to be like, have some, or like show some humility, and in general I do have a lot of humility in regards to myself, but in regards to like the lodge and the spaces, I'm really impressed how much we've moved the timeline on many topics. So every person, not just hosts, every person can give themselves like one of those, like, little shoulder massages or whatever with their knuckles, and like say that's a pat on the back from brother Jin, and then also Unc Jin, I guess, because I'm the eldest technically, or Joshua's the eldest, but he's with his other crew, so yeah, so technically I'm the eldest host right now. So yeah, the from your Unc Jin, good job, and also good job to Matt, because he really carried the Kabbalah ideas through. Like, yes, I obviously talked about them. We talked about the Dion Fortune book and all of that, but he persevered in the face of where I shied away, because I have this horrible thing where I get gun shy, or I get, as Mike tweeted about today, like two in my own head. So like, I'll be like gung ho about it, like totally like, let's go, like guns blazing, and then I'll be like, okay, I get a little, I get two in my own head, and I'm like, oh, am I fucking up, or am I doing this wrong? So you know, I try. So this is also, I swear I have a point. So this ties along with what Mike was saying about the timeline and cycles. Because there are cycles, and there have been cycles to the show. Even when we've done theme topics like Aetherpunk, or when we did the speculative economies, or I mean, we've done so many. I can't even remember right now. And usually I have a great memory, but today I don't know. It's been a long day, but in a good. I looked forward to this, to be honest. So. But I want to say also about cycles and the aeonic shifts of the timeline. Yes, Mike, please go ahead.
Sure, yeah. So with cycles, and I feel like this has just come up naturally. I feel like we're not real. I'm not trying to force the topic by any means. It's just coming up, and there are trends with the things that a lot of everyone has been talking about in the Grey Lodge, and the things that generally we're talking about. These things have not been cool or trendy. They've been very uncool and ignored. And I've been talking about some of this stuff for, I mean, not that long, but like a few years. And I don't originate talking about this stuff. I come more from crypto, actually. That's what the community that I was interacting, engaging with before I was talking about anything esoteric. And when I started talking about this stuff, which was not easy because none of them believe in anything, I was basically ostracized, like completely ostracized at first. And it took a lot of just like formulation of like things and rejection, and just over time just trying to like even understand my how to like incorporate talking about both, right? And trying to like engage with people that don't even, that kind of like can understand some, like the edge of some of it, but not like nearly the depth of it. It took a lot of time. And um a lot of these things, these esoteric things now, like with these cycles, they're growing in popularity. It doesn't seem like it, but it's not the same type of energy that it was even just like a few years ago. There was like an inflection point at some point, and if you're like very, very like tapped in and you've been paying attention just more to like the dynamics on Twitter and how people have been engaging with this stuff, there was an inflection point, and it went from like decaying and like dying and like this stuff not being okay to talk about to it suddenly starting to become very like edgy and like starting to grow in like popularity. And from where we're at right now, it's only going to grow for like the next, I don't know, 30 years or something or longer. And we're just very, 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 very early. And it's cool that, but also it doesn't happen by itself. Like you have to do it, and you have to push it with like there's just a time when you can do it, and you still have to do it. And it is cool that we are kind of molding the timeline in the way that we want to see it, and that we are. And it doesn't always seem like it, and it happens very slowly. But the process itself is cool and to see happen in live time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree. I said I wasn't going to swear as much as I did last time. I dropped so many f bombs. Whoa. But anyways, real Cantonese sailor out there last week. But it is what it is. It's all good. Um, yeah, I think you're totally right, Mike. I mean, I can't even emphasize how much you're right. Like the way it's changed in 3 weeks. People know who Nick Land is. We were talking about Solar, and I would like joke about like Nick Land and Chronopoesis, and I would like shyly bring it up, and I do mean shyly. I'd be like, well, you know, Chronopoesis is something Nick Land talks about, because I thought, okay, it's gonna like get me pilloried. But I identify with you, Mike. Like what you're saying, like you get ostracized. Like that's how I felt. Like this is like a little lore. Some people know about it, but like when I started Twitter, it was only to promote podcasts. It was only to promote shows that I was going on. Was not I had no friends. I really didn't. I had a few mutuals that like stuck with me for a long time. Solar obviously was one of them. Parabola, who's also in the lodge, was another one. Bicky, I've known Bicky for a long time, almost 2.5 years. So, or 2 years at least, Bicky. So, you have those people that like stick with you, or like that you kind of know from the beginning, but like it was like a wasteland. Like I had no idea. I didn't know who was cool. I didn't know who to follow. I didn't know what ideas to even like. I had my own ideas. That was kind of the thing, and that's why I think I come into conflict a lot. I'm not trying to excuse my own behavior, or the negative, my flaws, because I do have many, and I always say that I do because it's true. Yes, some are more obvious than others, but I think most of my flaws are quite well known, um, not indiscreet in those ways. So, um, I think that I have my own ideas. So it's sometimes I come into conflict with people who are more. It's not even about being flexible, as I often say, or even in flux. Sometimes it's just because I have my own ideas and I want to assert them, and I want them to be treated as valid. Not necessarily valid in and of themselves, but I want to test, like discern through discursive fire what they really are. And even if they hold merit. And I think the Aeon of the Daughter has been subject to all of these tests, because I know for a fact that I'm not the only person who speculatively, quote unquote, believes it. And it's not some like woo woo shit that's like, oh, like some like blue beam goddess is going to descend from Sirius and like save us all. Like, no, it's not that at all. It's about aeonic concepts, aeonic thinking, looking at aeons as actual things that help demarcate higher than cosmic time, like time of Kether, if you want to say, like time beyond the crown. Like what kind of time can exist? Well, it's post-conceptual. So that's also what an aeon is, but they also exist in the minds of man. Obviously, women as well. And women can obviously embody the daughter in their own ways. Just as men can also take her themes. That doesn't mean you have to embody her. It doesn't mean you have to be her. Obviously, this is something that we have discussed extensively, like Joshua Solar and I. I think it's more emptiness and love. I think that that is more the key words, more than like it's not. I just reject the hermaphrodite because it's not because I'm so rigid. I'm really not. I've really been breaking a lot of these preconceptual ideas that I had of being like ultra trad, like like I am, like I'm conservative because I come from a conservative family. That's the truth. I have more conservative ideas, but I'm also like willing to expand, not in that way, but I'm willing to expand my sort of worldview and my paradigm maybe is a better way to use frame that, and just say like it is whatever the fuck it is. Like I don't have to do that. I don't have to support that. I don't have to be about that. But people are going to be about it, and like I don't want to necessarily engage with them or the ideas, but I can't control it. I can barely control myself. Let's be honest. No, that's not totally true. I can control myself. I'm just, I have a fiery temperament. Mike can explain. He knows my chart. Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Every time you talk, I want to say something about your chart, but I also don't want to share anything publicly that you may not want shared, which is not like a big deal, but you say so many things and and I'm just like thinking about your chart. I'm like, this is like, you're so identified, like you're so perfectly encapsulated by your chart for so many reasons. But there's layers as well, like your nation, like you're from, and even your like race and things like that. Like that's like a layer to the way you act and your personality and things like that. But um, what I wanted to say was with talking about this stuff and feeling, yeah, when I was talking about this stuff, I wasn't, there was a part of me that wants to revolt and wants to rebel against this stuff because people are, I mean, not to be antagonistic, but there's a lot of just stupid stuff, and you want to be like, hey, like this, you want to get more to the source of things and like get more to like the essence and like talk about more interesting things. Like a lot of people are on the surface and they're they're not they're not understanding why like some of these things are cool. Like they're just missing it, and it takes time to because they just don't even they haven't even found some of these things yet. They don't understand what goes into developing some of these things, so they don't understand why it's cool. And it's like there's this like part of me and Jen like that you talk about as well. Where it's just like you want to rebel and like you want to just talk about these things because you know it's like your truth and you want to speak it and you want to get your voice heard, and you see so many stupid things on the timeline that get so much engagement. It's like, okay, well, if this shit can get engagement, like there's hope, there has to be hope for me, right? And you just have to keep trying, and you're just kind of at odds against with things as well because the algorithm doesn't always want to favor the people talking about the most interesting, like edgy, esoteric things. It's like favoring like really stupid stuff all the time. But that's not even what I origin like I think you're trying to reach with things. It's more just like cultivating like an actual like foundational like area like community and things like that where you can just interact with people and like have like some more like dynamics going on where it's not just like a desert and nothing is happening. I when I was first talking about this stuff, just like you, I remember, so I, like I said, I came from crypto and then I kind of got more, I started talking more about esoteric stuff. And I remember just thinking, like, when just stopped just talking all about like crypto and like digital art and stuff and started talking about esoteric stuff, I was like, I don't resonate with anyone. And I was like, how, what is going on? Like, how do I not resonate with anyone? I was like, I don't know any of these people. Like, I don't trust any of these people. I don't know any of these people. And I didn't. And it took me some time to like really flesh out like just like the few people, even like within like the area I was in, like who I could like talk about anything with. And still like it wasn't the depth that I was looking for it. It wasn't the depth that I was looking for. So like we really have to like at some point you just realize like you have to just make what you want to see. And after some time of searching, if you don't find it, like you really just have to make it.
This is the thing. This is what I've always said, and I agree with you 100 million%, 110 million%, we'll say, given a magic number. We should, right? We're saying we're magicians. I'm saying I'm a magician, and I am. Don't you fuck with me. But, no, but yeah, this is the thing. I think my account is like I actually saw your numbers, Mike. You have a pretty big account. I was like, whoa, Mike, oh, good job. Um, but you know, I don't know. My account is like shot. Like I reach who I reach. It's great. I love all the support and like people that like the shows, all the shows, both Grey Lodge and Threshold Saints, of course. Um, Mike, you're gonna have to come on pretty soon here. Get up my episode numbers. Uh, but you know, it is really hard. I find it really hard, even just to meet people that are. This is okay. So I'll tell you. So we'll just forget the meanderings or the rambling. We'll say. Here's my concise sort of statement on that. One of the prime ideas, I would say, of introducing the Aeon of the Daughter, which is not really my idea. Like, let's be clear, it is my idea in the sense that, like, I presented it, packaged it in a tantric and Srividya and Gnostic and sort of Arthurian, you could say, framework. I said all of these things are, you can think about it in all these ways because it's not something that's inherently quote unquote real, but it's also real. Like we are also shifting because we're always shifting because that's how the cosmos works, right? And so we don't have to think millenarian. That was my whole intention at the beginning was like, if you say, because everybody's like, oh, we're in the dregs of Kali Yuga, we're stuck in Kali Yuga, it's all shit because it's Kali Yuga. And I knew for a fact, especially when I was thinking about it, when I was talking about it at those times, I was like, you know what, motherfuckers, we are not in Kali Yuga. We have not been in Kali Yuga for maybe 100 and some years. And we are in a aeon of flux, but like let's fucking name it because naming the aeons, excuse me, not the archons, but maybe that as well. But naming the aeons is what is motherfucking potential. You want to talk about Gevuratic fire? You want to talk about like bringing the aeons into reality? You have to put those seeds into people's minds. I'm not self-aggrandizing and being like, yo, like I put Aeon of the Daughter. No, I didn't. I've always said like Frater Achad did it first, but I did it with Kabbalah in a different way than he did. So I did it in a different framework. Yes, Mike, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I've been wanting to talk about this since the last time we talked about this, which I feel like it comes up a lot. But there was a time that we were talking about the Kali Yuga, like specifically, and like the Yuga that we're in, like many episodes ago. And I remember the day after that spaces, like sometimes, um, okay, so I have a little, I don't even know if I want to say this, but so I was meditating, and the 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 word that came into my head was Numa Yuga, and I was like, huh. And usually when I'm hearing just words like clairaudience type things, it doesn't come up clearly where I automatically know what's being said. It's like sounds or like words usually where I don't know the meaning. That's always how it comes up. It's never because the words like that are in my like cycling thoughts are uh it will get lost in those and I won't notice it. But there's like certain words that are like not in like my cycling thoughts where it's like coming from like outside of me. And after that spaces, I heard New Ma Yuga and I looked it up and it's New Maha Yuga. And it was basically saying that that's like the new it's after the Kali Yuga. It's like a new Yuga. And but ignoring that completely, like whether you believe that or not, with the way that cycles of this nature work, with the Aeon and specifically with the Saculum, because that's like the cycle that I've studied. What typically breaks the cycle is it's like the moment of um, what is it called? It's essentially like it's like darkest before night. There's like a moment in the cycle where it reaches like an inflection point where it enters a new cycle, and it's like um I'm blanking on what it's called, but there's a term for it, and this is like well known with the saculum. And what I honestly believe is that it was World War II because that was a really fucked up time, and I think that was the moment of like mass strife, which caused a new cycle. And I think that was like the moment of mass strife for like multiple cycles, but I think it was for the Kali Yuga, and that's just my interpretation. That's what I believe, and I think it makes sense.
That was great, Mike. Do you want to keep going? Did I cut you?
Um,
I didn't.
I don't know. I mean, that's basically it. Basically, I just think that that moment of max strife um, applied to the Kali Yuga, and I don't have much more else to say on that. But I hear these types of things all the time. So this is this is the first time talking about it, and I actually feel very uncomfortable talking about it because I'm not like super psychic, but I have like a little bit of clairaudience where I can hear things, and only it's not like anything like otherworldly where it's like super intense and like it happens all the time, like just occasionally it happens. And after that space is the one time, like usually if there's like some type of topic of interest, like it'll happen like afterwards. I'm not like seeking it typically. So it happened after that spaces, and I didn't mention it because I just kind of I was going to mention it and then I kind of just forgot, and I just kind of like was like, all right, I'll just mention it next time. But I wrote it in my notes, and I wanted to say that and just mention how it applies with the way that the cycles work with the saculum. So yeah.
Sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But that was really profound. Thank you for sharing that. I also recently shared on the episode with Dustin, not Dusty, sorry, Dustin Cole, um, that I experienced synesthesia with words. So that was kind of me. I'm not going to use that metaphor. I'll say it was me kind of doing what you did, Mike, just being vulnerable and saying like something real. So it might interest you. Obviously, you've probably heard me say it, but there was a woman in the 80s and the 90s called Nema. And she was also working off the framework from Frater Achad, and they called it, interestingly, very similar to what you heard, the Aeon of Ma'at, like the Egyptian goddess who holds the scales. Very Libra, right? So that is kind of like they also called it Aeon of the Daughter. Like, be very clear about that. Like, I did not come up with that name totally by myself, but I will say that I actually heard it. It wasn't like with you, Mike. I'm not saying it like that. I just knew that was the name. I didn't know what it was, didn't know what it meant. That's like how all my names come. Like, you want to look at all the show titles. I don't know where they all come from all the time. Sometimes, yes, it's a wordplay, but sometimes I don't even know. It just is like it just is there, and so I just know that it should belong to something. Like a name should belong to something, or something should have a name. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it. So I knew there was something happening. I could see Aeon of the Daughter, and I also believe what you said. Like, there's an inflection point, and I don't know the specific name that you were looking for, Mike, but I will say the Aeonic shift also happens in perception. Remember, we talked about this so many times, like ad nauseum. I'm sure Joshua is just completely like barf. Like, he talks about Hesed and like seeing the ocean and seeing yourself and seeing the, vast expanse, the infinite expanse of loving kindness and like the karmic connections and recognition for the first time that like there's more to the, universe than perhaps we understood in our limited capacities as humans. So, and I also believe this is the Aeon of Psychic Youth, as I joked about many times in the last couple spaces. Obviously, I am not. This is not like an offshoot of Genesis Peerage or any of that. But I did do the first. Well, Zach and I did the first series on Tracy Twyman, looking at her work in a metafictional and metamagical way. So obviously that's where I was exposed to the idea of Temple of Psychic Youth, but then I was also like, yeah, they're also talking about something that is true, but like maybe the name is the only truth. Maybe the only thing they had to say, maybe the only like innovation in the Kabbalah was the name. So as someone who enjoys names, I was like, let's fucking take it. Doesn't have to mean, doesn't have to like even be attached to them. I'm gonna lift it from the motherfucking corpse like a good little tantrika, and I'm going to burn it in the fire, and I'm going to take of those particulates, and then we're gonna make something new. Just like you said, Mike. This is the Aeon of Man, Aeon of the Builders. So I very much think, like, when people were doom scrolling, now this has very much changed. Like, even in the last 3 weeks, like, very much, the timeline has completely shifted. And I'm not saying that's because of us. I'm saying, like, obviously Tucker and Nick Land and all of that happened. So, but this is all ideas that we were talking about. Maybe not the same, exactly the same ideas. Obviously, I don't agree with his, like, Nick's Klipothic, more Klipothic version. Although I do think we live in the Klipas, but that is not to say that we live in the Klipas as, like, oh, we live in the Kali Yuga. We're just all degraded. No, we live in the Klipas because of our preconceptions of the world and how much the mediatic influence and how much cultural influence and how much this kind of, like, we're like in globalization, like 11.0. Like, this is way beyond the wildest expectations of anyone. If anyone is old enough, I'm really aging myself. Well, I know there's at least 3 people or 4 people who are old enough. I know at least that. So, um, if you remember the battle in Seattle, yes, they made a really bad movie about it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the anti-globalization riots in 1999 in Seattle during the World Trade Organization. Even the things that those people were talking about, what we have now come into in 2025 is so radically different. The whole social media explosion, the whole AI, and AI was real back then. It just was different. They didn't really call it AI per se. It was more like, it was like you'd be playing a video game and it was how the NPCs would react to you, depending on the answer you gave. But that's AI. It's just, you know, or in a fighting game, like we were talking about what games we like today, or yeah, I think today or the other day. When I was saying fighting games, well, certain fighting games were notoriously difficult for one player. As you may know, I'm the eldest son, so I often played games alone. I was not like I'm not a Call of Duty guy. I'm not like a third person shooter. I'm not putting it down. I'm just that's not my style. I like I like I like brawn and DPS. So that is the kind of games that I tend to play. Obviously, Joshua and I did an amazing episode, which I very much love, on Resident Evil, but it was more on the mythology broadly of Resident Evil. And so that is also a game I would play that had puzzles. Vicky and I obviously talked about Tomb Raider and Lara Croft. And I will say that that is also like a kind of game I would play. I love vast expanse, I guess. I love being free in the world, and sometimes I think video games allow you to do that, and they allow you to explore like these alternate reality settings. But I also think it's important to say that now because we kind of live in this multiple reality timeline. And I think someone was talking about this, so it's not like an idea that's coming from me in any way or solely derived from me. But there is like an interconnection that we have to the online world, which again, I know this is repetitious, but we're just going to say it. It is the sublunar world. Like we very much, this is much more the Klipas than the real world, but the real world also has that quality. Yes, Mike, please go ahead.
Yeah, that's interesting to talk about, and you talking about the characters that you played, because I've noticed just I feel like my passions in life are very, very esoteric across the board. And it took me a long time to even figure out what I wanted to do. But when I look back just at the characters and types of things that I would play, video games, there was a lot of subtle like hints and things that make sense to me now, like why I chose it, because there was just an innate um, connection with the types of characters I'd play. Like just playing World of Warcraft when I was younger, I would typically gravitate towards like certain types of classes, um, like druids and like mage or something, or sometimes like even like rogue, but typically like those like types of like those types of things, and a lot of I don't know. I feel like WoW is can be such a good um, projection of the world in so many ways. There's honestly so much insight into that game with in games in general of how the world really works, because you do stuff and you level up and you don't really notice that you level up. The real world is a lot more subtle, and it's not as colorful as video game. You don't get a congratulations and like have a sound or anything when you're leveling up, but you do stuff and you're kind of just going along, and after some time, like you just kind of like level up in the skills you're doing, and there are like just these different classes, and you just do resonate towards certain things, and like even like with professions and things like that. I just think that's like really interesting, and like everything that I did when I was younger ended up being huge clues when I was older, and I didn't realize that until much later. Um, but I've just also been having dreams about playing a lot of video games, and everyone was giving me theories on why that could be, and I think that's a common dream that a lot of people have. And I'd really have no fucking idea, genuinely, like why that was happening. But I don't know if it's like some type of escapism or some other type of like yearning for like nostalgia or something like that. I've been just coming across videos where it's like, wow, like I remember when I was playing video games, like some of the best times of my life, and I have no idea. And I have so many dreams that are don't really seem like they're supposed to have a meaning. I just think I'm like drifting off into like another realm where shit is just happening, and that's how my brain is processing it. Or I have no idea what's happening, but there's something happening. Like it's not, it is not just contained at like the subconscious. Like there's some shit happening when I'm sleeping.
It's so interesting, Mike, that you were saying that. I was like, I wonder if we ever played together. I'm just kidding. But I always played. I know everybody will think that this is like a lie, but I swear on Dharma, this is not a lie. Okay, I always played a healer, not just because of the queue time in WoW, but also because I actually really like doing it. But I'm not one of those people who wants to be dragged along by like someone else when I'm questing. I like to be a solo quester, of course. So it had to be someone who was dual spec. So I had my three mains were a shaman, a druid, and a shadow priest. Well, shadow proc priest. But yeah, now you're hearing my real how nerdy I really was. But you know what? When I was in my undergraduate years, my roommates, this was before they I shouldn't really say this, but they borrowed uh they borrowed um an ethernet cable from the engineering lab, and they set up like a bunch of things so they could all like play WoW on some like server or something like that. They never invited me to do it, so I don't know. But anyways, the whole thing is like I got into it later and I was like, yeah, I totally know what they're doing. It's like so fucking fun. It's so this is like the best. This is like the coolest thing, like in a way. And but like yeah, it becomes grindy and like all about it becomes like all about something else. It becomes like all about like the capitalization of the game, really. But those like first couple like times, like I remember doing raids, and yeah, there is something really metaphysical about that in a weird way. Like you have to coordinate with perhaps like some of those raid bosses. You have to coordinate with like so many people, and you're watching gauges. You have your presets, especially for healers. This was always like the most nerve-wracking time because it would be like you watch, and especially like for blood, this was my pet peeve, was blood knights. They always thought that they could like like just totally solo tank like raid bosses, but it's like you guys are squishy as fuck, so stay out of the way, let the paladin do it, and let me focus on healing them. Why am I saying this? Because it's really interesting when you think about it, because the group dynamic played such a huge part in the success of the raid, but it really fell down to the tanks and the healers. But it also mattered the DPS. Like if they were just fucking around not doing anything, yeah, then the boss's HP wouldn't fall enough, and then it would proc like some crazy attack. So you know I promise I have a point. Sorry, Mike, please go ahead.
I know that we sound so dorky right now, and I've given this some thought because it's just interesting, especially with these different classes and like healers especially, because I think that's a kind of a class like in modern day that is not accepted. We don't have, priests are not seen in the same light that they were hundreds of years ago. Like, we don't have healers. Nobody even knows how to really heal. And I honestly am, I mean, I know how to heal at this point to an extent because I've had to heal so much shit, but the nobody really knows how to heal super well. And the structure of like these different like tank, DPS, healer, like these are very good metaphors for like different the way that different people are. Like some people are like tanks and they can just fucking take hits, but they're not good at healing. And if they take too many hits and they fall down a lot harder, right? And like these different group dynamics, like it's good to have these different types of classes like in, I don't know, like a business or whatever you're trying to do, because they hit on different um elements and like attributes that can allow like give you success. Like you're not, if you're in a business, you're not attacking a raid boss, but you're like doing something where you're, doing some type of like mission together, and it requires like these different skill sets. And I do think like, I mean, not just like the healer, but like the more like spiritual stuff, like the magician or even like the druid or whatever, just like those like the squishy like cloth wearing classes, like that's like the classes that are missing right now from society. And a lot of people are not realizing how much it's affecting them by not having a fucking healer class. Like we're all doing fucking dungeons without healers, and people are just getting smoked. And they're like, what's going on? Why is life so hard? It's because you don't have a fucking healer. You need healers.
This is the thing, is that healing in the game, in-game healing, was always said to be like this like very feminine thing. This is why I never admit to it. But it's really not actually. It's actually very metagame, because you have to understand, I know this is true for everyone, you had to understand like the specs really well, but you had to kind of understand everybody's spec as a healer, especially for tanks or for other healers. You had to kind of understand how it worked. So there was a lot of metagame involved in that, because you had to like kind of learn even classes you didn't play, because you had to know like, oh, is this person going to do uh, kind of like a huge heal, or is it like a small, or is it like a heal over time like a hot or whatever if you're a druid. Different things like that, or group heal, like how many do you have until it can proc, and how many do they have. You had to know all those things. You had to keep them all in mind. So I think very much being a corporate raider, I'm not saying that all people in business are corporate raiders, but I'm saying that there's an interesting analog in language that I think Mike is also like very much touching on. Is like, yeah, you're not destroying a raid boss, but you have an objective where multiple parties that you may not even know them, you may not have ever interacted with them, maybe you don't even like them. That happens a lot in WoW if you've ever played. So people always rival and get mad at each other, and it happens many times. Rage quit. So, not to me. I was actually pretty good, but the reality is, because like, who's gonna play? Like, if a healer goes, that's like a big loss, right? So they try and be nice to you and like keep you satiated, I guess. But I think that that's like with everything. I think that it's just a vidya. Obviously, vidya means wisdom. I mean, it's very obvious, kind of like Sanskrit one to one. It's interesting that that became the kind of colloquial word, the online like Zoomer kind of cusp millennial word for video games, vidya. I don't think that's any coincidence. I think they are, and Vicky and I talked about this in the episode that we did a million years ago. It's like, I think it is teaching you how to play in space and time and how to navigate like all of those things. It's not like you're not like, for okay, Tomb Raider for example, like you're not taking on the T-Rex in real life, but having a conceptual idea of like places and spaces, like where can you go, where is like a ledge, where is like a place that you can sort of not cheat the game, but sort of like optimize your surroundings, optimize your angles. So I think that that is what a lot of what video games teach us, is like how to maneuver in place and space. I think the problem is like social media is very much also a video game. I think the algorithm is played very much like a video game, I'm not saying I'm innocent. I'm saying that yes, I do post all on magic numbers now. But like if you look at my account like even 4 months ago, that was definitely, I mean, sometimes it would just happen naturally for me, but it would never, like it would just happen, like I would have an idea and it would just be like 22 and I would hit post, but it was like very little will, very little forethought. Now I have less will, but I would say I have more forethought. So I'm like, okay, I have to post at these times to get like any kind of traction, pretty much for me. I'm not saying that's true for everybody. I'm just saying for my account, it just seems, well, I've gotten a lot of fights with people, so you know, the legacy, the bodies hang over me, I guess, as Seth would say. So you can never fully escape being a baddie, I guess, but you can sort of like try your best today or tomorrow. So I try and do that, and there are people that I feel like, there was a person. I'm not trying to be like ooh or anything, but there was a person early in the lodge, like Beetle Drink from the Dharma chat. He was a good dude, and we should have never like had an issue. And he will probably will never listen to this, or anyone who knows him will listen to this. But the reality is like we had a dumb falling out, and it was like just at the wrong time. And maybe that's like how it happens. Maybe it's just like Mike was saying, like with the market. Like you see, people on social media are, whether they are conscious of it or not, obviously, yes, Astro Twitter is more conscious of cosmic planetary cycles. That is not the highest form of time, though. Let's be clear. I'm not saying that to Mike. I'm saying in general. That is not the highest conceptual layer of time. That's not the ontological layer, the aeonic idea, obviously, which we talk about the most. That's the ontological layer, aeonic thinking. The cosmological layer is the planets. That's not bad, and the stars. But it's a little bit less. It's a little lower tier, but that's not bad. That just means that it's we have to understand it. Maybe it's closer to us. Maybe you could say it like that. But then there's also the more Gnostic idea that the Aeonic thinking can help you sort of break the klipas or the sort of husks of conception that are involved in astrological thinking. Obviously, Mike and I have discussed this in other spaces, like not just Mike and I, but like all of the other co-hosts, Matt especially, and Joshua knows all about this, and Joshua and I talk about klipas all the time. So it's basically the same thing, right? Like I always say, like planets are not evil per se, but they are minor archons in a way. You can think of them as that, and you can think of them as kalpathic in nature. That's not inherently evil. That just means that they are aggregated as they are, and they aren't necessarily the primordial. Well, they aren't the primordial truth. They're only relative truth. That's why I like, especially in my baddie days, I love to fight with the Astro girls from Twitter. Not just the Astro girls, but particularly the ones who I would fight with the Astro guys, but they would block me right away. So it wasn't as fun with that with the girls. It was they would kind of entertain it because they would kind of cycle through the argument. So I would always say to them, like, why are you guys praying to the planets? And it's not that they would be like, oh, like Lord Shawnee, like, let me light 10 black candles and feed 10 crows. And, like they weren't saying that, but they were like, oh, I have this Ashtalisha in this place, and this planetary thing with this conjunction and this asteroid. And I'm like, okay, yes, all of those things, relatively true, correct. I agree. But it's also about like your perception of them. Do they rule your life? I don't know. But then Mike's also saying that I fit so many things in my astrology, which I honestly, Mike, I don't mind. There are other people who have done my chart who dislike me now. So, it is what it is. I gave you the most real birthday I ever gave. So, just for the record. Yes, Mike, please go ahead.
Yeah, we've talked about this, like with the astrology. A lot of people on astrology Twitter can just overgeneralize things where it just gets really, really annoying. And there, there's a lot more complexity than just obviously your natal chart. But people are the thing that is so irritating to me is they can tend to not. They can be very illogical, and astrology is not necessarily a logical discipline. There's logic in it, so you kind of have to. It's very intuitive. It's very emotional, so you kind of just have to like sense and feel and go with your gut with a lot of things, and that can go overboard a lot of the times where it just becomes completely irrational. Especially if people are trying, like if they're wrapping their whole identity around it. But a thing that I think a lot of people miss is, what about twins? Like twins can be very different, born on the same day, have completely different karma, completely different um, life events, everything. Like in whether they're fraternal or identical. Actually, literally, I'm a twin. I usually don't mention that. I'm a fraternal twin, and I'm very different from my brother. We're very, very different, but we have the same exact chart, the same exact chart. So there's obviously a lot of other things going on than just that. And this is what makes me a little bit more skeptical that you can even like see like past life karma stuff in your chart, because you can literally be a twin, have this like you're two different souls. Like how the fuck is there? How can you have everything be the same and like you have different past lives and the same charts? Like, but I think there's a little bit more. Like the chart itself, I think is it's somewhat of a divinatory tool where it's not super explicit. Like it requires some type of like intuitive interpretation where that is not, like the planet doesn't mean anything explicit. It's a very like abstract symbol, and a lot of different meanings can come from that, and it can mean different things for different people, and that's really like the job of the astrologer. So like when you're too like focused on like the textbook of like, okay, this means XYZ, that's where things can go awry a little bit. Like you really have to listen. That's where you have to really listen to like your feelings and like your intuition for the right interpretation, and that's what makes it really fucking hard. And I think that's where a lot of astrologers need, I mean myself included, just like you really have to develop a lot of things to get a better idea of how to read the charts. But there's so many layers, so many layers, like your race, like where you come from, like those are all like an energetic layer. Like this is something that I've talked about a little, or I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but like every, like certain races have certain energies, and like even certain like geolocations, like if you're born within like certain quadrants have. So this is like something Ptolemy wrote about in his book, where he split the world into essentially just like four elements, and he splits it like in the middle of the Mediterranean, and then that's the so there's a line that goes through the Mediterranean, and then there's like a vertical line that goes through like somewhere in like the Middle East. And so like Europe is like the fire nation, essentially. Like that's like a fire archetype, and like within that there's a bunch of, it's like it's not it's a little bit more nuanced, but that's like the fire nation. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because like Europe has been very uh they're a lot more extroverted. They've been they've like sought to like expand their empire, and they're just, even like their spiritual practices like tend to be more like mental, and like everything is like things are more psychological, where it's like on the opposite side you have like the archetype of earth, which is, in India and like most of Asia, where like China and like those are like very earth and archetypal countries, and they're more body focused. And like in India, he says like India's Capricorn, and Capricorn is like very actually like spiritual, and that's why you have all these like very like intense like meditation things coming from there. And then China is like more Taurus energy, where it's like they're just like more in touch with the body and like different like herbal things and like traditional Chinese medicine. um so there's so many layers, and that's one layer.
I think you're touching on something really important, Mike. Is that something that I've discussed a little before? So Joshua's heard me say this. I apologize, and Avi as well. But different places do move at different aeon, are on different times. This has become very true, like very real to me. I've noticed this, not just recently, but it's become more clear with some things recently. Mindsets, perceptions, yes, There is different aeonic thinking. There's like, maybe they don't even have aeonic thinking. I think when you look at certain countries that tend to focus on the other aeonic archetypes, obviously there are four, but there are multiple aeons per shift, right? As we've talked about many times. But you can tell. You can tell that they don't have that they're not on the same aeonic cycle. And you can see like where there are, every aeon works in a dialectical relationship with the other. So I'm not saying that they can't all work in concert, but if the aeon is the aeon that it is, so let's say that I'm saying that it is, even though I don't like a fixed cycle per se, but we have to say for the purposes of conversation that it's somewhat fixed, or at least what I'm saying is true. We can say that certain ideas are going to be less potent, contain less seeds, less potential in certain kalpas or aeons. It's just that's how everybody has discussed it. It's like should not be that controversial. But I think that Mike where it is controversial is that people don't even talk about it. Like, oh, can another country be under a different conceptual time? Well, of course they can be. Can different places be on different cycles of the wheel? Of course they can be. They can also turn the wheel differently, right? Like different leaders who have maybe more conservative or more traditional ideas, or leaders who are more progressive, more quote unquote forward thinking, they can also turn the wheel. But it also happens in what? Perception. That's how this always happens. It always happens in perception. So I think I've always said this, and we obviously did a whole long form, like 9-part series. I know I don't talk about it very often, but it was part of like the whole Aeonic thing because it came right after the Aeon of the Daughter. So we did the Welcome to Hyperborea and Return to Hyperborea. So the whole idea in that was that it is actually the new world. Sorry, Vicky. Is the new world is where the place of primary importance for the new Aeon. So what I like about this is it rejects both like the third worldist kind of like, oh, America is like this like evil empire and you're just all evil for even existing, breathing air. Because there are people that really legit, a lot of people do legit think like that, and it is kind of backwards if you want the truth. It's very backwards because like we're barely agential of ourselves. Like how can you blame us for the machinations of the archons? Like, okay, like should we blame you for all the backwards things that happen in your place of origin or whatever? That's kind of why I laughed when you said like even my race is represented in my chart, and I was like, yeah, the crazy and like bipolar Hyperborean for sure. So, but I also think it's interesting because in a way it also maybe gives me like the like the Hapa magic. Maybe that's Hapa boy magic right there. Is like I can say, okay, like there is a layer where it's like a lot of a lot of American ideas are good. That's just the reality. I'm not some like hater anti like person on the internet that's like, yeah, fuck America. No. And like I love a lot of people in America and Canada and like North America, and like like it's like devaluing, like we've talked about so many times, like, or at least I brought it up because I'm really interested in this idea of like geo-indigenous or geo-ontological kinship relationships, like treaty relationships with place and with each other. And I actually do really find that very profound. I won't cry, but I find it very profound, and I like the idea that it actually relates to something that could be left-hearted and like ridiculous, but actually there is something more fundamental to it, and it can actually be fundamentally real. Because what is more real than the place that you arise, not just as the person you are born as, but also in your state of consciousness? So I just think like we have to be, but it's also not being married, as I often say, it's not being married to the institutional or klipothic structures. Not that they're inherently evil of themselves, but there is something to be said, like Mike even referenced at the very beginning, like that rebellious spirit that is very American. You want to talk about like a quintessential American trait? That's a very American trait. And so maybe that's okay for us to embody a little of that anti-hero. And I would say the Aeon of the Daughter actually allocates and allows for us to do that. And so we don't have to agree. We can say neither fucking nor. We don't have to agree with either. We can just say we're just doing our own thing. We're going in our own direction. We're moving forward with the Aeon. We are not moving backwards. Solar was telling me how he learned to play shogi, and I won't tell on him, but he learned to play shogi through a video game. I also learned how to play shogi through a video game. So, but I won't say which one because it's way more embarrassing than his. So basically, the Golden Prince, so Jin, you could say, or the Golden Emperor, he can only move forward. And I totally forgot about this point, and then he brought up shogi, and I was like, oh, actually, that's what I always liked about shogi, was that it always kind of represented me in a way, or I could find myself in the game very easily, at least, just very superficially, but in an interesting way, I think. And so that the Golden Emperor, there are multiple emperors, but the Golden Emperor can only move forward. And so while I may, as you told on me, Mike, in chat today, I do have like some very emo tendencies, 100%. And anyone who knows me I mean, Joshua will know the most, so will Zach. Uh, but yeah, I do. I 100% do. I'm very deep in my feelings. I know if Matt was here, he would chastise me, be like, "Yeah, you're leaning too much in your Netzach. You're too much in your Venus," and then I'll switch to Hode like thinking and say, "Oh, I think," and I'm pretty good at that too. But there is a synthesis of those two things where you don't have to be fixed in either thinking like that kind of analogical perception or feelings. You can be more vibe. So I always give credit to the Zoomers for this, is that they kind of get that. I don't say that I'm not saying they understand the Aeon or the cultural like landscape that I'm horrified to sort of witness, because horrified in the way that it's not that I think it's evil or bad again, but I just think, wow, it is truly the carnal ground. But I'm also of the carnal ground, so it's not even me making a judgment on the state of things, the state of decay. It's like, yeah, I'm part of the carnal ground. We're all carnal ground beings, but we are also all beings of the garden. We are also all beings of consciousness. And so we can actually choose higher consciousness if we choose. Because I think this is what the thing about twins, Mike, that I found really interesting. You can have your free will. You get to make certain choices that are not going to be perfectly reflected in a traditional understanding of an astrology chart, because people are way more agential. And anyone who's good at Jyotisha, I'm not talking about like the walking around and going to like some guy on the street Jyotisha, although, sometimes in Hong Kong you can actually find really good astrologers that way, but usually you go through the recommendation of someone. But there's a kind of degradation where it's like, you are fixed. You must be married to this person, and your charts have to match exactly like this. And the reality is like, I've never really gone with anyone who fit my chart, and it's always been to my detriment. So I don't know. Maybe it's not. It's not. Maybe that's disproving my point. But I also think it was of my own choice. It was of my own will. So I chose to see those things through in a way. And I think that that is also like part of our human experience. Like, it's not to necessarily be like, oh, we're going to correspond everything together, because are you kidding? There's couples that have a perfect astrological chart done in the more Klapothic, we'll call it Jyotish way, where everything matches, everything's perfect, everything's like aligned, the families are like aligned, like even the parents have good astrology match charts, and they do all that, and it ends up in a terrible relationship or divorce, or it's just like it never happens. And that happens because that's real too, like in a way, like like those things are not perfectly mapped, because we are, as Matt often says, this is Matt's thing, so I'm not stealing it from him. The tree is a living tree. The paths form as we make conceptual, obviously. Yeah, I agree, Joshua and Mike. Yeah, we're on the same wavelength on that. We're surfing the same quicksilver wave, right? Is that, yeah, they it is so much less fixed. We are building the tree as we go. Yes, Mike, please go ahead.
Yeah, I've heard Matt talk about this as well, and I think it was the first space that I had with you guys where I really appreciated his take that it's there's no one path, and I think a lot of people have a deterministic perspective of the world where they believe they have complete free will to do whatever they want, right? That's the common perception, but a lot of people who do believe in things that are spiritual tend to get too sided onto like the fate aspect of things. And there is a strong fate aspect. There's things that you may not be able to change, but it's not like you have some fixed fate. There's a lot of different things going on, and your path is a lot more fluid. Like you might have a singular goal or mission or something, maybe, and but even then, like, it can change, you know, it's not like you have one purpose. I mean, some people do have I do believe in the concept of twin flames, that you could there could be one person that you're meant to be with, but I don't think a lot of people do have that, and even if you don't connect with that person, you know, there's other people you can connect with. Like, it's just all there's certain things, like certain guidelines that you even come in that you may have intentions to succeed with. And, you know, if it doesn't work out that way because of how things work out, because the world is a mess, it's chaos, then there's other ways you can go. And even with astrology, like, there is absolutely nothing with astrology that says is completely fated. It's literally probabilities of how things will happen. And a higher level of thinking, if you have a certain like mission or something you're doing, it will probably be strategically laid out in a way that allows you to learn or develop certain things, go through certain experiences before you can do certain things. So in that way, there's a fate aspect, but where it's like you're trying to like you have like a Saturn dasha at some point in your life, and afterwards you have another dasha which is better for certain things, and you have that strategically in a way that you're going through these experiences so you can learn and grow, and then you can be able to like do something later with your career. But there's no like fixed there's nothing fixed in a chart where it's like you're just y- there's no events where like there's no you can't tell when somebody's going to die. Like there's no you don't know when somebody's going to die. Like you can't tell who someone's there's a lot of shit you can't tell from that. And yeah, it doesn't say everything.
I 100% agree, Mike. It's not fixed, and our understanding of these things is not fixed. And we can continue innovating, and some people don't like that word because it sounds like I'm rejecting the traditionalism. I'm not. I'm very much rooted in like the ideas that we must reference the text, but we shouldn't remain fixed in them either, which I also have a hard time with. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it or that I have the secret sauce. Of course, the secret sauce is non dualism, but like you fall in and out of that consciousness. It's not something fixed either, is what I've also unfortunately come to realize, which is not bad. I'm saying unfortunately, but the reality is like it's a pink aeon. I know that makes some people uncomfortable, but pink doesn't have any inherent meaning. It's a spectral color, as we often say. Color of the crystal millennium kingdom. It's like the light from Kether shining down on us. So sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, but it's always there because it's the crystal kingdom's always there. It's just sometimes we see it and sometimes we forget about it and sometimes we don't recognize it. But it's always there on Yesod, on the moon. We're also there, but you know, well, that maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's. I think it's an interesting idea from the Sefer Yetzirah, or Yetziradic astrology. I think the idea that really the crystal kingdom is on Yesod, I think, is very profound to me, and obviously I always credit Sochki for introducing me to that idea. And it's not that he was the only one. Obviously, Ramak talks about it too, but I think that it's in such a different way, like Sochki and the Sailor Moon. It was like, oh, click, I fucking get it. I was like, yes, it totally makes sense. I totally understand what he's talking about. I see it. I see the Sailor Scouts taking form as the Sephiroth because they are Dakinis in a way, one way of thinking, right? So because they're women and they're empty, they're not necessarily the planets. They wield the power of the planets, but they are not necessarily of themselves the planets. You could say they are the stars above the planets, and stars are kind of inherently empty, or they can be. So, anyways, I just want to say, like, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's nothing is really truly fixed, and but I will come on the side of love for this. I'm not saying that, Mike, you weren't. I have long believed in the idea of the red string, and maybe this is like a very woo emo goth boy thing, but I do believe in the red string. I do believe that I do believe that there are karmic connections. I don't think it's just necessarily about twin flames, and I think that's something. I'm not saying you said that, Mike. I don't think that, but I think that it's something that a lot of people get wrong. It's like a fixed thing, and I'm not saying I'm successful at this because I'm not. I'm like not successful at love. I'll be the first to say so. But in terms of red string, I think it exists. I think you can, and it's not just with lovers or whatever, like partners or boyfriend, girlfriend, or wife or whatever it is. It's like it's all these different factors. But I also think that it's between friends, and I think that it is between like even people you maybe just say hello to on the street. I think that that is much more boundless and expansive what karma is. But I do also believe in the other thing where there is like someone who does, or maybe there are multiple people in multiple timelines. And that's the whole point of rebirth is that you sort of come through and you get to untangle or re entangle yourself in those karmic connections because this is something we've talked about before, and I came down more hardcore trad life on it. And I'm not saying that and I wasn't really. I'm pretty flexible, I would say in general. Like I'm like just do whatever you will, but this is like my perception of the Aeon, and this is kind of like the themes. But I do think that like we entangle ourselves often in certain lives and with people that maybe we have entangled with in the past, and maybe we kind of entangle ourselves further. So sometimes it requires multiple lifetimes to kind of like disentangle and like kind of figure out like what the connection even is, because it is very easy to confuse. Like, if you meet someone and you're like, what is this weird feeling? Like, that can be of multiple layers. It doesn't just have to be like of the romantic layer, right? Can also be like just friendship layer. It can just be intellectual. There's lots of different things. So I just think it's we have to be like Mike was saying. It's like not about being fixed. It's not about like saying yes, my soulmate in like the world that's supposedly 8 billion people or however many they're saying. It's like we have to find that one person. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Like try and find that one person. Try not to like use up all your karma entangling yourself with 500 other people or however many. I'm not saying 500 other people for me. I'm just saying you don't want to you want to limit your entanglements to a degree, and you want to also explore the ones that are there. And I think that is also goes to the point about twins. It's like, yeah, you could have divergent karmic kinds of, it's not fate, it's just that you have divergent karmic sort of conditions. So the way that you express those karmas will be very different. And if someone is reading the two charts, although there is the argument in Jyotisha that nakshatra is very, very powerful and can kind of overrule the defining terms of the planets. That's one way to think. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that's an idea. But I think that, yeah, I think you can express karma very differently and have the same birth chart. I absolutely think that that's true. So, it's just like we have free will. Like free will is self-evident. It's so obvious in this world. Like, yeah, are there confines? Yes. Are there klipas? Yes. Are there but it's mostly your own mind. It's a lot of your own mind. It's high degrees of your own mind, at least. Yes, Mike, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a short thing that came to mind with charts. I I do not charts are very weird. And they when you go deeper into the metaphysics of where a chart originates from, it starts to get really fucked up. And it also gets really fucked up with how different charts interact together. Like if there's whole techniques of astrology where you take two different charts or sometimes even three different charts and you combine them, and then that combined chart like means something. Like what the fuck is happening like under the scenes where that can be something like it's completely irrational, or if there's any reason behind it, it's like it's like such a deep reason that is just beyond anything that any human could possibly understand. And when you look at, as I've just looked at my own chart and charts of other just random elections of different things, whether it's like someone's like business or like a nation or something, it's not random. It's not random. But I don't think I think it's more, I would say it's more strategic than it is like karmic or anything else like racial or things like that. Like I think it's more strategic. And I think you kind of come in like purposely somehow, like I have no idea how, like a you plan to come in at like a certain time to like catch a certain like energy and to like help you successfully like do whatever you're doing. And there's just so many, when you look at certain charts, there's just so many coincidences that it's just impossible that it's just random. Like someone doesn't just have a baby at a certain time and it's like that's just random. Like that shit is like divinely guided in some fucking way. And even in a lot of cases when there's not elections, somehow like the thing that somebody's birthing into the world, whether it's like a certain type of idea, like a business or even a nation, when they have no idea of the astrological implications, it somehow like captures it somehow aligns with like the idea that they're trying to put out. And I think that's like such a like a weird metaphysical concept to contemplate. And I cannot tell you how that works out, but it's just beyond reason.
I think this is an amazing point, Mike, and I'm really glad you brought it up. The idea of being, I've called it before, in the numbers. Very possible. People who are very like it doesn't. They don't even have to be metaphysically minded people, but it can just happen. It can just happen. They can just be aligned with like all these things. I know people talk about like, I know Mike, you've talked about like aligned with your purpose, and I agree with that. I'm not counter signaling you at all. But I do think that's important. I do think that that is like that's how I used to post. Like it was very much more like all these magic numbers, but I never planned it. It was just the way I thought. I guess it was like in the timings and in the numbers. So very much on my mind, right? Because I'm a very like that's how I tend to be, is very cerebral. So it would just happen coincidentally. So I don't totally understand how it works either, but I know for myself, the more agential I am, the more practice I do, like the more sadhanas I do, the more like upkeep, not just spiritual upkeep, because that's not even enough anymore. You have to be. I'm bad at this. I'm not saying that I'm good. Like there was a whole period this summer where it was like I was trying to do like maintenance sadhana. No, that was not it. So definitely that, it's about when you're practicing really hard, and maybe it's not happening at that moment, but there is a kind of alignment that happens where you kind of become more conscientious maybe of the three world system. I know there are four worlds. I know I see Robin in the room, so I'm not gonna, I won't misattribute the Kabbalah, but the reality is like when your highest perception is really of the three worlds. So I think when you're at your higher, it's not even that you're aware of it, conscious of it even, but maybe you're just more in tune with it. It doesn't mean anything, like, don't get me wrong, I don't think it necessarily means it's like everything that's birthed into the world at the correct alignment is a success, right? It's both. It's like we don't want to say it's fixed in astrology either way, just because something happens at random or is planned by a chart. But it's also interesting because I often think, and I've talked about this before, but a lot of nations have magic birthdays, whereas the astrology has been kind of retroactively applied. And so then they'll pick a date that is more suitable for those nations to arise. And I also think that they choose dates in advance for like treaty signings, constitution signings. That makes perfect sense. I would do the exact same thing if it were me. Mike would have to be on my retainer, and I'd be like, yo, dude, I need like these dates. You have to do elections for me, like all this stuff. Cause like that is how, if you're a magician, and we're all magicians in a way, but that's how you're thinking. But you don't want to also be married to that where you're like, oh, I need elections to run my life. Because you should be also be in it enough that the numbers are also happening. It's also clicking like by its nature. Yes, Mike, sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, that was Jen. I just want to emphasize what you're saying because this is something with astrologists, especially where you once you have the ability to elect because you understand how it works, you start electing everything, or you think you try to organize your life around elections, and it's a very interesting concept because before you know it, like if you don't know anything about astrology, you actually are moving to an extent with the astrology. There's like a natural process to things where you're not just led to your doom. You'll elect things without any knowledge of election y- s- m- at the right time. A lot of the times, like you just feel when something's right. Right, you have that inner compass. But there is a time when some and I also want to say is like that might even be better than electing a lot of times because you're so fallible as a human being. I don't trust I honestly don't trust almost anyone to tell me an election and to expect that to be better than essentially like what I feel is more right in some sense. In some cases, just because I think like the way you're guided and your compass might lead you to the better outcome than you could really figure out yourself. But there are just situations where electing comes into play. And as as I've been talking about a little bit with gambling, literally, I've been trying to like even elect times that are more auspicious for that to take advantage of that. And weddings in general, like that's like a really good time. But it's just weird because sometimes it's better to not elect, but it's not always easy to know that because if you have too much control, then you might fuck it up. And it's a difficult system to really figure out.
Okay, this is such a great point, Mike. I'm so glad you brought this up. Electional astrology. So electional astrology is actually considered like to be a pretty fundamental, but also it's like it's someone who's like gained in knowledge. They're no longer just a neophyte. Maybe they're like an acolyte. So, like in the olden times, we'll call it. This is very imprecise, but in the medieval times, like they would read Picatrix. That would be like the astrological like grimoire that they would use. So it would be a very basic thing that because it is like Mike's saying like for ritual timings in particular, the astrological conditions become very important, especially if you're using the planetary intelligences. So like Orphic hymns or like the like the Keys of Solomon. Like I'm very fond of it. I should say, I was very fond of the Keys of Solomon, the greater keys, but I also understand how to work the lesser to a degree. As much as I knew how to work the greater, probably, but yeah, I preferred the greater because they were just like it's more planetary intelligences, more angels. It's a little safer, a little. But basically, that's I think that is the so basically, what I'm trying to say is that electional astrology is super important. It's very important in magic, but also don't get fixed by it, like Mike is saying, because there are times. This is where Indian, or not just Indian, but Dharmic religions are strong because that kind of natural outpouring of faith, if you want to call it bhakti, I don't really like that word because I think that people misunderstand. I'm not saying anyone in this room, I'm saying that people do misunderstand often what that word means. And a devotional love is very important, but it's not the whole marga. But I think that those spontaneous moments of like, okay, I'm going to pray, I'm going to do like a lemon bali or a lemon puja or do this thing. Or I'm going to do just like a sadhana, I'm just like in the mood or like, or you have, maybe you only have like a few hours a day and you're going to like set it and you're going to do it. And it's just like, maybe it's just like a magical election and you have no idea. But I think the more you practice, the more you get into the numbers, and the more things start to happen. So this is why I said, like, don't just do maintenance. Do something more fundamental. I'm not saying do magic every day, but I'm saying don't just like sit there and like stare at a wall. I think that that is one thing that a lot of Buddhist Twitter, a lot of Dharma Twitter, and a lot of um, uh, meditation teapot Twitter. This is something they get really wrong. Meditation is really none of the things that they say it is. That's why I always say, like, do it. You don't have to be like you don't have to follow Dharma or be like a tantric Buddhist or anything like that. But there is something fundamental about like working the word, like reciting mantras, reciting certain prayers, like doing it in that way where it's like more of a rajasic or an active or an impulsive practice. It's very important. It's like that's more fundamental meditation if you want the truth. I'm not saying that you shouldn't sit there in like if you want to be zen and like sit there in a zen meditation and kind of like work that way. Yeah, sure. I agree that that is useful. But I also like think of the context, and I'm not saying being a Tibetan Buddhist is like the context in 2025. I don't even know if I think that anymore. I mean, I'm still a tantric Buddhist. Like, don't misunderstand. I'm just saying that it's okay to want it's okay to think more progressively. I'm obviously not using this in a political way at all, but I'm just saying there is a way to think of it. Like, often we have discussed this, we pioneered this as a group, American Dharma. What is that going to look like? What can that be? What does that mean? Is that a real thing? And we also called it American Gnosticism because I think that both of those things fit very closely together. They're not one to one, but they're close, they're parallel. So, but it's also like what we said at the beginning. It's like, what do we make of it? Like, I'm not anti-Christian. I'm not anti like traditional Dharma. But I'm also like, I've spent like so long doing like magic, doing tantra, doing these other things, and like, yeah, it didn't always happen for me. It only happened in the last like 6 years. So what? Like, like obviously those practices did bear fruit eventually, but it's also like, how do you relate this to people who don't have the same cultural context? How do you relate it to people who don't have the same religious context? So we use Kabbalah, but we also can use astrology, as we often are doing tonight. I like doing this. But we also have to use like Aeonic thinking, and like sometimes the Aeonic thinking is very uncomfortable, like even for me. Not being so fixed, not being so reactive, not being so readily like ready to shoot arrows like fireballs at everybody. I don't do that, but just as a conceptual idea, is like I think that like I'm flawed in many ways, and I don't fit the conceptual Aeonic ideas in many ways, and I notice my deficiencies. Like, no one is my biggest critic but me. Even my biggest hater is not as much a critic of Jin as Jin. Like, I'm aware of my deficiencies, but I also feel like I can do better. I feel like I'm in flux. I feel like I can change. I feel like we're all agential and we all can change. And I think that that is what COVID, if you want to say, like, we took the great lesson away from it. Hi, John. How are you? Good to see you here. Uh, but I think that the whole idea of like Aeonic thinking is to take us into that kind of agential place, and then we can say, if you want to be dharmic, you can say, okay, well, the self doesn't really exist, but it does exist, but it's empty. And what is empty? It's it's luminousness and masslessness, and held together by love. So take of that and make of that. Yes, Joshua, my brother, please go ahead.
Hey, I'm glad I was able to catch you guys. We had about 20 people turn out for old Wally. I don't know if Wally's a good Halloween movie, but I guess when you think about it, it's kind of dark because everybody's dead in the movie. But anyway, I'm home now. So I was listening, however, and Mike said about something about twin flames earlier. I once dated a hippie chick who was a Libra. I don't know if that helps. But I being an Aries, she's my direct opposite, right? Zodiacally speaking. And she was into that twin flame stuff. Of course, she had 50 other twin flames. So it's more like a stovetop burner, but all of them work together to cook, right? So anyway, what I kind of got from that experience was maybe you have a soul type, maybe not a soul mate, because it seems kind of silly that there would be just one person out there, right, that you're meant to find or whatever. So I kind of came, my more practical side was like, well, maybe there's a soul type. And then I got to thinking about it as I got more into astrology, and I was like, oh, well, maybe it's the element thing, but here's what I've noticed. So rarely, this is my experience, rarely do mates pair up with the signs they're supposed to be. But I've noticed with best friends, it's almost always what you would expect. And so I had a question then, I guess. Um, is there anything to the soul type stuff you guys think, like same element, opposite element, and or um, does karma or dharma maybe factor into who you end up with potentially?
Mike, why don't you field it, and then I will, field the debris, I guess.
Okay, I definitely trust me when I say when I first was told by just one psychic that I have a twin flame, I was like, how the fuck is there one person on this world? The concept of it is so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. The thought that there's one person, and how big is the world, right? Like, if you don't match with that person, then you just, you do. It seems like such a loss. It's such a grave loss, and the concept of it makes me a little bit uncomfortable because to be stuck with one person. Like, I feel like there's so much, um, like value and uh, just pleasure in existing to know that there's like many fish in the sea, and then you can kind of like explore and do stuff. Like, to think that there's one person is it feels like a very restrictive concept. And the only reason why I believe this myself, and I'll talk about the other part of it. The only reason why I believe that, well, I just believe that there can I after a lot of thinking about it and just like seeing other people in my life that are in relationships and stuff like that, like to have the type of connection that is on that level is very, very rare. Just like after there are, however, like you said, with any type of relationship, like there is a type of polarity in the people that you connect with most. Like, if you're one side of like the archetypes, typically the person that is your most is your best match is someone that is on the opposite side of the archetype. They're like your weakness essentially. Like, you can kind of meet somewhere, and it's not like literally like yin yang 50-50, but typically it's people that are like opposing polarities. And I've seen this like my with my parents, which is like not even the most my family's very it's not like the most harmonious relationship, but like my mom, for instance, is like more yin, like she's Cancer, and like my dad's like very yang. And I've noticed like with my sister, like my sister is like a Libra, and the person she's dating is an Aries. But I also don't think, but there's just so much more complexity because like even though they're like a actually I don't want to say this on Spaces, but I don't think they're a good. I don't think they're like meant to be together, and I don't think they're. I shouldn't say this. Fuck, no, I don't want to say that on a record Spaces. But even though they're a good match, doesn't mean like it's theoretically like it will work out or they're meant to be together or like there's like a deeper connection there. But like typically with a type of connection, soulmate, whatever, twin flame or not, like the person you're going to connect with the most in like a type of relationship will typically be someone who can like embody the the parts of you that are your weakest parts. Like there's usually like a protector and like a healer in a relationship, and sometimes it gets a little bit mixed up within each other depending on just like people's roles. Um, so, but I honestly I hate the concept of twin flames. I think it's so annoying. But after just my experience seeing things and hearing certain things from people, I do believe it, and I do think that you can incarnate in the world, and that there's someone else that you're meant to be with. In some cases, not everyone, not all the time, but I think some cases like that does happen where someone's like meant to be with someone, and it may or may not work out. Like there's people that I know that actually this is just it gets so it's so hard to talk about because it's so there's so much uncertainty to it. So you just have to like trust me when I talk about some of these things. But like there's some people that I know that I honestly believe I even think I know who their twin flame is, but it's not even working out because of just how the world is. Like the world is not a perfect place. Like you're just because you're meant to be with someone doesn't mean it's going to work out. And sometimes like you grow and like you have people grow in different ways and like the way that you're brought up like may make it not work out and then you might not even like them. Like just because your souls are like very like closely in sync like at like a deeper level and even like archetypally you might even be in sync, but just based off of like the way that you were brought up and like your experiences, maybe they're not healed, maybe you're not healed, like it won't work out then. Like there's just so many factors. So it's like very hard, and that's why I don't like the concept of it because it makes it's like damn, like if you don't connect with them then what? But there's I don't know.
Everything we say is speculative. So the peoples don't exist that Mike described. They're just 100% speculative beings. So, yeah, that's how we fix all the spaces, Mike. Don't worry. It's all speculative. Um, I agree. I agree that the concept of the twin flames like being fixed, I really don't like that. I think that people over rely on that concept, but I also agree with you about archetypes, about polarities, about and I like what Joshua said about best friends. I agree with that, Joshua. I think that this is what makes it really complicated is you have so many multiple karmic connections. It's not just like the twin flame. And it's like Mike said, like you might not even be end up with that person that you think that you might have a karmic connection, a deep karmic connection. Maybe you are meant to be together. Doesn't mean you will. You have free agency. So I think that it says a lot. And I think it also is about like environmental factors and like cultural factors. I do think that plays a role. Yeah, Mike, sorry, go ahead.
All right, so I just want to give one more theoretical example. So I have a friend who I'm not going to name any names, of course, but very, very psychic, very, very psychic. And they believe that they have a twin flame and that they've met them and they know who they are. And they have been, they purposely are trying to not be with them. And they even have like insight into their karma and like how their next like few lives are gonna be. And they're like, and they are purposely not connecting with them and not like trying to be with them, even though they have a very strong connection because they think it's holding them back. And there's like it's not good for me, so I'm not doing it. And this all this stuff is also kind of in flux as well. And I think like just through I you may not even if you may theoretically have a twin flame that can change, right? Like you're not just it can change through space and time. Like it's nothing is set in stone, really. But I do believe that there may be someone you kind of like you want to connect with because I feel like really, really deep connections are rare. Like it's very, very rare to find. And I think the more you live through life, like the more you understand, like this shit is very like it does not happen eh, often. It happens very, 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 very rarely, and it takes a lot for it to happen. It takes a lot. It's not easy. It's very, very hard to make to even like establish that connection in the first place and make it work. Any of these types of like connections where you like really resonate with someone deeply. Like there's a lot of like synchronicities that have to take place. Like you have to be in the right place at the right time. You have to be in the right state. Like there's just so much.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. I muted myself. Sorry, Joshua. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for sharing your thoughts, by the way. So, as you guys were discussing this, I got to thinking, maybe we kind of think about the twin flame thing, generally in the wrong way. Maybe it's not really supposed to be like a romantic partner, but somebody that lights you on fire, so to speak. Like, is your born again experience tied to this person? Like, maybe this is the person that's supposed to make you become spiritual and, put you on the path of the Kabbalah, so to speak. And so maybe when we think like the new agey way about it, it's like, oh, well, they're my twin flame. I got to marry them or whatever. It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe you were just supposed to go to the park and talk, or, and that person like changes you somehow. And now you're on fire. But as a fire sign, I have to say, I think this is elemental appropriation. Anyway, thanks.
Look, I think it can take multivariant. Like, I think that there are certain people that come in your life for a reason. I really do believe this. I'm not saying that Mike's wrong. I don't think that's Mike's wrong. I never use that twin flame thing. I've never said that. You can search my posts. I've never said that on a space. I guarantee 100%. I do not use that framework. I reject the frame. I reject the frame. But I think that the idea that you have karmic connections, whether they are romantic or friendship. Look, romance and friendship are part of the same polarity. They just are. So learning to be friends, like this is I've talked about this many times on the spaces. Like me learning to be friends is part of my personal, like the how I view my great work, because I'm not necessarily the best at it. First to say. So I would like to do that. Of course, I have other aspirations, maybe. But the reality is like I'm only an agent of like what I can control right now. And as I joked, I'm only agential in and of myself. So that's all I can do. I understand that I've upset people. I understand that, I'm abrasive. Okay. But, I really do. I do. As I started podcasting, I said this, the very first podcast, I said, I didn't love the person that I used to be. Not because of like any, like it wasn't like some like grave. Yeah, I mean it was kind of because I had been fucking around with magic for so long. I just felt like I fucked up so many times and I had to like fix it, rectify it. And the only way I knew how was through Buddhism. So that was like my whole story. And I still feel like in that process, it's just like the framework, not necessarily Buddhism, but the ideas have changed for me a little. In terms of like I do, but I at the core I consider this a project of rectification, both Saints and the Great Lodge. And that is also the power of doing a show with other co-hosts. So anyways, I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to ramble too long over you.
You're not rambling. I know I appreciate everything you're saying, and I think that's funny. Honestly, twin flame is such an annoying word. I really hate, and I think the more that we've talked about this, the more I even am putting it into like a little bit of perspective. It's more like just throw the word twin flame away. I think more it's just that there is this concept, and it's not just with love. It can be with like career stuff too. It can be with work. It can be with friends. It can be like there's certain people like there's a concept of contracts, and with certain people, and I don't know if love has contracts necessarily because I feel like that's a little bit, but there's certain people that you are in some cases meant to encounter in your life that you are trying to work with, that you're trying to do stuff with, and in some way they're like your career twin flame. Like it's just a soul that you're like you have some type of connection with, and like you're trying to make something happen with, and it may happen and it may not happen, but there's definitely like a very with certain people you just have certain like synergies or certain like history where your just souls connect on a deeper level, and it's rare. And there's certain people that you are just meant to connect with in some way, and um it's everything is mutable and everything, but they're just that's my point anyways.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I'm saying, there are many, many karmic connections. It's not just about love, and that's what I personally hate about the twin flame things. But that being said, I still do believe in it, and I am a romantic at heart, and as I think Mike is also. But yeah, that's a stupid word, and I'm never going to use it again. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I think the only time I'm ever going to use it again is if the person that says they're my twin flame, like we both have Elon Musk flamethrowers, and it's like, all right, I might make the exception then, but anyway. So I was going to source from something personal with my job. My boss is a Capricorn, and so over the years of having the job I have, she's like sharpened me by getting me to be better with deadlines, time frames, just all that type of the boring stuff an Aries hates, right? And so had my last boss before her was a Scorpio, and I hated her. I try real hard not to hate people, but we did not get along. And my moon's Scorpio, so I don't know if it had anything to do with it. But anyway, this boss is a Capricorn, and we have perfect synergy. We get along really great. And I and when I show up to work, uh, I bring her a water usually, and it's called Karma water. So I thought you guys might get a kick out of that. But anyway, she's one of the few people that I actually do pray for regularly, because when I get onto the road to head to our office, I know that she's headed there too, right? She's also on the path, but coming from a different direction. So maybe that's applicable to life, but where we're meeting is like the Sephiroth, if you think about it that way, right? So there's a Hode quality maybe with employment and that type of energy exchange. And of course, it's a nonprofit, so we kind of share in the vision and stuff too. Whereas in the business world, it's less likely. You don't ever really know if your values align with who you're in business with, right? Know your customer is a good phrase. It's applicable there. But what you said earlier about party questing and solo questing when video gaming, I think you were talking about World of Warcraft. I was kind of thinking of it this way too. Maybe the twin flame person is just somebody that helps you clear a dungeon that you can't clear on your own. And they're meant to complement you in some way. Like, I'm always a paladin, so I would need, well, I don't know, paladins don't really need another class to help them. But anyway, whatever goes well with a paladin.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Joshua, because paladins were the easiest to heal, because obviously you have so many self heals. If you have the right procs, then you have like the buffers. So yeah, that was like it was always that's interesting. This is the thing, is that I think that love is like very expansive and multivariant and doesn't necessarily even refer to romantic love. I think we all know that, and I think we've talked about that extensively with Aeon of the Daughter. Now, in that being said, do we have to also acknowledge that perhaps it's going to take like forms that we don't necessarily recognize, or like it's not part of like the conception of it? Yes. So take of that what you will. I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying in general, and people are also going to misunderstand. If you are so fixed in your view of like, oh, okay, so for me, I'll say like, if my perfect wife is like, okay, so I'll say me at 20, Jen at 20. My perfect wife, she'll be Eurasian. My family will love her. Her family will love me. We'll both speak like, I didn't say she had to be Indonesian, but I said like, yeah, if she has to be Chinese, she has to speak Chinese. We'll speak Mandarin at home. And if we have kids, like I was like very much like that. So I was like, this will be important. This is like important to me. And then I ended up with someone that was very similar to that, and it was a horrible speculatively, it was just not it was a very volatile combination. So that was not the right choice, right, for me, but it was what I thought I wanted. It was what I thought that was like the perfect fit. But that's often, I think sometimes our preconceptions just lead us wrong. And so that's why it's so important to like try and disaggregate, as we often talk about. And like Matt talks about this all the time too with his posting. Like, you can choose a different timeline. Like, Matt's more in flux than me, but I think that you can choose a different timeline. Absolutely. And it's about your state of conscious. Maybe I'm a millennial. Maybe I'm too fucked up and it's harder for me to shift. I don't know. But, we're all trying out here, all the Nagas, right? Hey Vanessa, good to see you back. Okay, I don't know what order you guys put your hands in, so I'll let you duke it out. Mike and Joshua, please go ahead.
I just wanted to add a short thing, just talking about the subtle layer of like you don't choose. Like there's a layer of like societal conditioning, but ultimately at like the deeper level, like you do not choose what you're attracted to, what you're interested in, like what types of like attributes of someone that really like interest you. Like that's just, it's just something that matches you, but I think it's also something that it's deeper than just matching. Like there's stuff there where there's like a spark, and you don't choose that. That is something. There's some choice involved when you're doing anything, but I think ultimately, like with these different um soul level connections, like you're not choosing necessarily.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Mikey. You're going based off of like the spark. I think that's a great thing to say. And like just because there is a spark does not mean you have to pursue it. Just like in Kabbalah. Interesting, right? The Sephira are all sparks, right? Sparks of splendor in a way. I know that's more Hode like, but it is true of all of them as well. So you don't have to follow every spark. You don't have to connect with every spark, but it is really difficult. If you find the spark, you're gonna want for it. You're gonna yearn for it for sure. At least in like the few instances where I've encountered it, it is like one of those things. Like I really get. I like. It's rare, right? Like Mike was saying, it's really rare. Even just the initial spark, even the initial spark is rare. So it can be really hard to like not want to pursue that. And but it is about time, space, and place, and states of consciousness, and like there's so many factors. The world is very complicated, and it also is a little decayed. Like it's an aeon of flux. It's not, this is not the new aeon of the father, or the aeon of the even the old aeon of the son, or even the aeon of the mother. It's like something totally different. So everything is kind of more of the carnal ground, and it's more decayed, more, it's how people would sometimes think of Kali Yuga. But Kali Yuga is very Saturnian and very like fixed in its nature. It's like it's very Protestant, very Calvinist, right? Like it's all degradation, it's all shit. No, the daughter arises from the klipas. She arises on the carnal ground, but that's not inherently who she is. So, as you all know, I'm big into these ideas of redemption through different archetypes. But I think that I'm gonna let Joshua go. I'm sorry, Josh. But basically, yeah, I think that that's why it's important. I think that aeonic thinking is probably the next thing. If we're going to do something as meta magicians, that's the one thing I'd love to see is like discussions of aeon. It doesn't have to be aeon of the daughter. If you want to take it like that, sure, great. 100%. You don't even have to credit me. Just like, I think that's amazing framework. But I also think that just aeonic thinking, like we read the Kenneth Grant book. He was talking about aeonic thinking. They're all talking about aeonic fucking thinking. All of them. All of them. And you never hear like the cool kid influencers, or the occult influencers, or the cool kid magicians. They're not talking about aeonic thinking. We're like so far ahead in this way. Anyways, I'm sorry, Josh. Please go ahead.
I think that's a really interesting point because uh, I work with mainly teenagers and stuff, and I noticed that a lot of them cannot think of the future like it. And I learned through this experience that that's kind of a skill. And I don't know how many of these kids grow up to be adults also not able to think about the future. And so to be aeonic in your thinking, well, now we're talking, okay, so you're thinking 3,000 years ahead, and most people don't think about even what they're going to eat tomorrow, maybe, So I think there is something to be said about that because I think that is a skill that you can hone. And again, maybe those Capricorn elements, the Saturnian elements, thinking of time, because after all, Saturn's got what, like 20-year plus orbit or something like that. So I think that's a good uh, lens, I guess, to look through this and understand that. But what you guys were saying about sparks earlier, like that song says, you can't start a fire without a spark. That's a good song, by the way. So dancing in the dark, you got to have a nurture to that spark. You're not just going to get flames from a spark. You would have to invest in it. So like you said, not every spark can catch your attention, and sure, but the one that you do go after has to be nurtured, right? And so that it can become a flame or fire. Now, that's a single spark, of course. And then there's sparks, which maybe makes it easier. So maybe that's when you got the little bump from the universe. It's like, hey, you got multiple sparks here. You're not even really have to work for it, kind of like the Charlie Kirk Memorial, sparks everywhere. But anyway, so that is something where you got to work at it if you only got a little bit of synergy, or if you don't even have a spark, you might have to rub sticks together. And so, maybe if you're totally incompatible, you got to put a lot more work into it, but you can get a fire just the same, right? And so you may not even appreciate it as much if it's being done for you. And so I think sometimes when it's too easy, like you said, your friend didn't want to deal with the twin flame thing. I rejected the twin flame too, because I was testing it. Like I was like, you know what? I'm gonna call you on that and challenge your twin flame theory, And so I think there's something inherent about that too. It's like, wait a second, you're trying to take my free will out of this, you know, or whatever. I don't know. Still friends with her and stuff. I'm just saying, like, it's a strange thing to navigate when somebody's trying to tell you that you're your twin flame. So what does that entail? Um, but the one last thing, you kind of brought it back to timelines, and I was glad you did, because as we were having this discussion, I was thinking of algorithms. And so, could this relate to the algorithm of life? Like today you're going to run into this person and that person. And it got me thinking of one of our prior conversations about skillful means. Maybe it's part of this path walking in general. I'd wonder if the more aware you are of your path working or walking, if the discernment and everything goes along with this, you're like, that was a test, so on and so forth.
I mean, a skillful means really is referring to that. Yes, I agree. But you want to know the secret sauce, the tantric secret sauce? Okay. Um, Skillful means is really a way to navigate the layers of reality using tantra or using sorcery. Ooh. And doing it in a way that is not so karmically implicative. That's the real that's the real meaning. But there's also ways you can do that with words, because words are also magic. So like Mike even brought up the idea of contracts. Like karma is a treaty. Karma is a contract. And so like that's why I say, like, that's why we all said, like, don't be fixed, because the treaty is being written in your life as you move through it. Like, yeah, I don't have the best certain, I mean, Mike's better. I don't know my own chart at all, to be honest. But the reality is like, not everybody has a perfect chart. That doesn't really exist. That's like a myth. Like, yeah, you can have the best. You can have like the most, what's considered to be the most optimal a planet in this house, and all the alignments are like amazing, great. I know people like that. I know people who are very unhappy like that in like the place that they are supposed to be perfect. So I'm not saying that I'm better. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that I'm just saying that if you compare mine and theirs, I wouldn't say that either of us have had any like particularly better luck. So I'm just saying it is the things, it is choice comes down to it. Like, I think that's what you were saying, Joshua, is like it is a lot to do with you being an agent of your own will, exerting that will, saying that I will entertain this idea. I will allow it to sit in flux. I will allow this girl, this void, we could say, to this Dakini, to entertain this idea of the twin flames. But what does that mean? And I think that is like the more Geberatic way to respond to that. If you want like a more Kabbalistic thing, which I know you're fond of lately, especially because you've gotten so good, rivaling me. But yeah, you definitely do. You're definitely as good as me. Well, all of them are. I mean, Matt's a little above all of us, but I was the strongest for a while, but now I mean, not stronger than Matt, but I was always good. So we'll just say, like, I think that you exercise your own agency and free will by saying, like, let's explore it, but we maybe won't be contained by it. And I think that that is really the concept of like, can really contain a flame? That's kind of not the idea of the Aeon of the Daughter either, right? It's not really containable. She's the princess of breaking klipas. She's not the princess of like she's not the primordial mother who's like constantly giving birth on the blood ocean of like to like the degradation of the world. No, she's like reborn from the ashes of the old world into the new world. And whatever strain you're smoking tonight, Joshua, I really appreciated the like little lyrical riff because I thought that was hilarious, and I've never really heard you do that before. But sorry, Joshua, please go ahead.
Thanks, man. I really like to sing. I used to do Shmule or whatever it's called. That was a lot of fun back in the day. You just sing with people, but so I was thinking about the algorithm thing in life in general, and I just thought of something funny. I was like, so if you laugh at your own jokes, is that like liking your own posts? Does it keep the bots away?
We all should like our own posts. Don't hate on people for liking their own posts. Sometimes I get like very few, so I need it needs me. I have to be in perception. I have to like set the algorithm to the thing. To be honest, though, I would have never done it before, but now I just and I don't care now. I just really don't. I'm like I'm gonna like it. Like if I think it's good, I'll just like it. I don't care.
Well, I do it because if you don't, you'll get like bot requests, and if you like your own posts, you won't get one because it's like part of their algorithm, I guess, is to seek out new posts without likes. I don't know how it works exactly, but since I started doing that, a lot less bot activity.
All I know is that I still am an amazing Twitter poster, but my Twitter posting has fundamentally changed from how it was, and so I'm still trying to figure out what it will look like in the new Aeon, I guess. Or I guess we've already moved into the new Aeon, but definitely, I said it was February 2025, right? That was, I think, the date I gave. I was like, yeah, that's it. That's the Aeon of the Daughter, which a lot of other people were saying was like a big it was a particular astrological timing. So I kind of rode off that track, you could say. Very Aeon of the Daughter. But no, I agree with you, Joshua. I think, yeah, please go ahead.
I had another thought just now and about how we think of time as very linear. Of course, we don't. We know it's cyclical, but I mean like in the internet way because you have a timeline, right? But and I don't know if Twitter does this necessarily, but I think Facebook maybe does, where after so many periods of month or years, it'll like remind you with memories or photos from the past, and that's kind of like where the timeline loops, and then it'll continue going straight afterwards, but it loops for a moment from a period of time in the past. And I just found that kind of interesting in my mind as I was envisioning it, how that works.
Well, Joshua, as you were co-host on on those space series that we did, I forgot what they were called, but we did one on speculative archaeologies, actually, where we talked sort of about this, about the ruins of the timeline, of how like people leave artifacts of like old accounts, old podcasts, old like whatever it is, old posts, like all of that, and like it's all old, and it's also old ideas as well, like ideas that people talked about in like 2013. Like how many people remember, like I was not on Twitter then. I've always said like I did not use social media at all. That's why I always say it's like very new for me. Like all of this is very new. It still feels very new. Podcasting still feels very new. So I don't blame that on my deficiencies, but I will just say that I'm still getting a grasp of like where I am and what this is. But I do think that the timeline is very chronopoetic. Like I referenced that right at the beginning. Yeah, it's a very chronopoetic thing. Things come and go, and it's very archaeological as well. Like things get resurrected, or you could say even very tantric. I know people loved it when we did that. Wasn't just me, but I named it. So I did like the corpse culture one, and I said like, oh yeah, it's about resurrecting the corpse. And I said I'm going to give all the tantric secrets, but we ended up talking about history really most of the time. because that's really what it is, and that's fundamentally what we're even talking about now, is resurrecting the seeds, maybe even from the timeline. And like I'm saying, like I'm more of a, well, we referenced it, so I said I'm more of the golden emperor, if we're gonna give it like a shogi thing. Shout out Solar. But right, he moves forward, right? He can only really move forward. So maybe that's why where I'm strong is that I'm able to like think forwardly. I'm not saying I'm the only one, or that it's my sole strength, or anything like that, or that I'm special. I don't think that. I'm just saying that I think that's a particular thing that I can do, is that forward thinking ability. I don't know about 3,000 years in the future, Joshua. That was a little excessive. I also said that the Aeon is a particularly short one, if you remember. I'm sure you do. So I think it is a particularly short one, but I think that that's what makes it even more interesting. I think that we're born in like such a peculiar. I'm not using that, Zach, in a funny Tracy Twyman way, but I'm saying it is a rather strange time. And I often liken it, like when I write. I know some of you probably cringe at my poems, but I like them sometimes. And I often say it's like a Ghost World, or Ghost Boys in the Ghost World. Yeah, that's very much how I feel sometimes on the timeline. It's like very much like we are ghosts in this sublunar world, which is true. Very Rahuvian Ketu world. We've talked about this so many times. Like, Rahu is your physical phone, Ketu is the actual um, software, the kind of like the interface, you could say, between us and each other, time and space, transcending that, right? That's how magic is fucking real. It's all in the palm of your hand, in a way. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I really like that word you used, chronopoesis, because it made me think of time and poetry. And of course, in poetry, you have meter and rhyme and measure. And in fact, to such a degree with Norse, I think that that's how you can spot forgeries or inconsistencies, is if the meter does not match the prose or whatever. So it's almost like a rudimentary form of cryptography, I guess, if you think about it. And this is also in the Bible too, with the Torah. Different verses were wrapped around sticks, written in Hebrew and then broken in half. And so, you'd have to be very standardized with that to get the message decrypted, right? But anyway, runes in Hebrew have a lot of similarities like that, kind of like battle languages. But a couple of movies came to mind also, as we were talking about the timeline kind of disappearing or dissipating, or maybe even fragmenting, however maybe we characterize it. But the dead internet theory, I think, kind of applies there. But it reminded me of a movie called The Langoliers. So I don't know, that's an old movie, but if anybody likes like scary Stephen King type movies, it's not really scary. But the premise is like there's these creatures that eat time, and this group of people is flying on a jet. So I guess arguably they're time traveling, right? And so they somehow get trapped in the past where these creatures are eating up the time. So anyway, just kind of reminded me of what we were talking about. But the another movie that kind of came to mind that relates to the chronopoesis is The Never-Ending Story, because after all, it's the universe is a never-ending song, right? And so in that movie, there's something called the nothing, right? And I kind of imagine that being the same thing. It's like the dead internet theory, basically, the fringes of just nothing. Um, I had another thought, but it eludes me at the moment, so I might recover it in a moment.
No problem, Joshua. You just jump in whenever. You're good. You're good, brother. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, is that eh, online can always be better if we are better. But it always can it there's a psychic toll it takes from existing here, is what I've learned, or this is what I think anyway, is that there is a psychic toll. The bigger your account gets, the more pressure, you could say, it takes. The more public your persona, the more pressure is exerted upon you. I'm not saying from like external forces or anything like that, but even the pressures of your own mind. This is something I struggle with. I'm just being honest. I always want like the episodes to be the best they can be. I want the Kino to be the best they can be. I want everybody to be happy. I want people to rebook with me, obviously. I want to book like bigger people, but I also want to book like my friends. Like that's the whole point of having my show. It's not to be like thing. I'm not trying to. I think my show's better than Rune Soup, just to be honest. But anyways, we won't get into that. But I think but my show is not supposed to be a rival to that, where it's just like occult authors, like and this and this. It's supposed to be like it's people that I actually connect with, have a connection with. And yes, sometimes it is greater occult authors as well, and like other people that people may not know. And like recently, it's been like writers and poets. Obviously, this goes directly to what Joshua is saying. And in the episode with Dustin, I will say I did reference, of course, this is the famous joke of the Lodge, but the infamous book by Dr. Stephen Flowers. So I mean, the idea of it, I actually gave a really good tantric example. Like I listened back to the episode, I was like, "Fuck, am I smart sometimes?" I said like I gave it a more tantric layer. So if you're interested in that, I won't even relay it, but I'll say if you're interested in hearing that, you can go listen to that episode with Dustin Cole. And sorry, Joshua, please go ahead.
Oh, see, I had lost the thought and then it came back as soon as you said that. So I was very relieved. So if I've ever dropped my hand, it's because I lost my train of thought. But anyway, well, just like we're talking about, I feel like reputation's tied to Capricorn. So maybe that is an energy that matches that, like expectation, or standard. The attention to detail and things like that perhaps apply there as well. And even with the time, like you're always very cognizant of like the time that you're posting, right? So to me, that's very Capricorn sounding. But which kind of relates to what I was gonna what I forgot and remembered. So in terms of the chronopoesis and which aeon we're in and so on and so forth, it almost kind of feels like we're leaving the age of Capricorn too, in a way, because everything's ruled by like a schedule, going to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, so on and so forth. So there's almost been like this theme of Capricorn for a long, long time, I think. And that's kind of ending now with the age of Aquarius, as it were, right? And maybe this is kind of marked by us having more leisure time, which seems to be the case. I mean, we even hear conversations about people not having jobs because of robots and AI and all this. And so I think there's an element there where the aeonic thinking is only possible when you have leisure time, because if you're preoccupied with just trying to stay alive, you can't really think too far into the future. Certainly not really thinking about aeons into the future. So I think that's kind of like you said, a very special time that we're in, where we can enjoy the fruits of the past and be laboring for the far future too, because we have the time to do so.
Yeah, well said, Joshua. Thank you for saying all that. I'll respond to that after Mike. I'll let Mike go. Mike, please go ahead.
Josh, that was very perceptive, and I want to just riff on that Capricorn part because not to out Jin's chart right now, but Jin is literally a Capricorn rising with Saturn on his ascendant. And when I first met Jin and before I looked at his chart, I was like it's clear that Jin has. I mean, I heard him say that he's a Sag sun, and it's clear that he has some water in him. Like there's depth and there's aspects that are just very obviously like water archetype. But I was like, he has a strong Earth aspect to him. I was like, I want to know. That was the first thing I want to know. I was like, where the fuck is it? Like, what is an Earth? Because he's so grounded. And he has like this certain um he has this certain identity and just aspects around him. But he's literally Capricorn rising, Saturn on the ascendant. So that was literally like right on the money. It was so perfect. And Jin, this is what I mean. Like you are literally. I need to look deeper into your chart as well. But from what I've seen, you are literally you're so much your chart. I mean, everyone is really, but I just want you to know in particular, like you're so much your chart and the world, and just on the other aspect you were talking about with the world, and I think we have been like a very Capricorn age where everyone's there's been so much conformity, and you see it like in the style with suits, like people, especially like just not that late ago, like 100 years ago, with men wearing suits, and literally it was only men working, and everyone was wearing suits, and it was like the same fucking suit, and everyone was wearing hats, and it was like the same fucking hat, and if you like in New York City, I feel like New York is like the most fucking Capricorn, just modeled city on the planet. It's literally just this like, it's just skyscrapers, and it's just business, and it's just rectangles. Like it's just like maximizing like a certain, it's just maximizing surface area with like just, and it's all just business, right? And that's what it feels like. Um, but we're coming out of that where things are kind of breaking down a little bit, and we're like rethinking all of that. And you see that just in the fashion and everything else. So yeah, I think that's evident.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? That okay, so first of all, I'll respond to my chart thing. So I always say I'm an Aquarius. I'm like a spiritual Aquarius. If you think about it, because I'm a fire sun, I have the strong earth, and a strong water sign. So I'm the three primordial elements combined. In Tantra, this means that air it arises, right? That's the whole idea. But it's only when you're in perception that it's the five elements. So this is really talking about the 13 or the 1 and 3 or the 3 and 1, if you want to think of it like that. But then it's really the 4. But then also because I'm in perception of it, not just because Mike told me, but yeah, because we're talking about it right now, it's like extra. It's like extra sensory perception. So yeah, there's a fifth layer. So that's just like the aeons. There's like always the, the dragon is part of the aeonic cycle, but he's not an aeon, and he's not really an archon either, but he can function as maybe a little bit of both. So that's kind of what I think is like, it's very much the age of Aquarius, if you want to call it that, which is fine. I have no problem with that. Of course, stars over planets. That's my preference, obviously. That's what I believe. So, but I think it's very much of like us taming the dragon, very much us taming the Aramon, if we choose. Maybe we won't choose that. Maybe we'll go and we will recreate Battlestar Galactica, as I always like to cite. Um, and that's what it will be, and it'll just be like us rotating to the 13 colonies and getting blown up by the robots and marrying the robots and interbreeding with them and all that. So, but of course I say, like, we're not black pill, and we're very much about like aeonic thinking, which is actually like much more redemptive and much more about like giving us a shot and giving yourself a shot too. Like, as someone who's a big critic of themselves, I will just say, like, there is something to be said. Like, when I release an episode, and I'm sorry, I'll shut up about myself and let Joshua go. But there is a kind of like, it's not being high. It's like, it's terrifying, and it's also like very exhilarating, because it's like, yeah, I birthed something into the universe. Like, not just me, but because it's the colors of the art that I choose Kabbalistic things. Like, yes, I do that. I know everybody already knows that, so it's no big deal. But even the episode numbers that I give to people, I've done this since like episode 1 on my show. It's like everybody gets Kabbalistic numbers. Like, I think about it. I think about how it's going to relate, how it's going to relate to the art, how it's going to relate to the colors, how it's going to relate to the things we talk about, and then I try and match a quote with it, because I'm a big fan of the words. So I want to say that it's like, yeah, maybe I am very Aramonic in that way, like very like Age of Aquarius, but then also like wrestling with both the dragon and the maiden and what that means, particularly for me. I think that actually would make a lot of sense for my chart. And so, I always say, like, I was always a little more evil, or a little more neutral, evil inclined, but I wanted to choose something else. So, I don't know if that's particularly true, but it is a funny way to frame it. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
Yeah, man, that's what they say. It adds character, right? So, like, if you add a redemption arc or whatever, it's like, wow, you're adding character. So you were talking about the four elements a moment ago in your chart, and it reminded me of something else I had forgotten. Maybe there's something to the twin flame thing, but that should be reserved for fire, right? Because we do have it in the other elements. How many times have you heard somebody say, "He's my rock"? Hey, that's earth. How many times have you heard somebody say, "You're the wind beneath my wings"? There's even a song, I think Bette Midler maybe. That's wind. I couldn't think of the fire one, or water one rather. Maybe you guys could help me with that one. But you're my deep pool, baby. I don't know. You're my well. Yeah, Oasis maybe.
I mean, any song by like the Mamas and the Papas, like the California, that's a very water song. Like I know they're trying to be Age of Aquarius, but that's like, it's kind of very like emo, as Mike would call it. Like it's like there's just something, I don't know. It's just something that kind of drags you down back into the like sublunar world, maybe that very dark purple world. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, Yesod is also a connection to death. Yesod is also our place of redemption, our moon disk, if you want to call it that. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, but Yesod is so much about our perceptions, like what we consider real or not real. That's why I think the Aeonic thinking is so important, and why I'm glad that both of you guys were so into me going here tonight. Thank you, Joshua. Please go ahead.
I think I may have had an epiphany just now. So if you think in terms of the elemental zodiac signs and also how they relate to the tarot, because each of the four elements are represented with the suits, right? And each of these majors are analogous to the paths of the Sephiroth, or the Kabbalah tree rather, between the Sephiroth. And so I think this can be a way to show a relationship between the minor pip arcana and the major arcana, is that uh, these could be people that you meet, rods being fire signs or whatever, or earth, pentacles being pentacle signs, and applying that to the path working might be an interesting way to incorporate all the cards and not just some of them.
Okay, well, this is sort of a deviating from your point a little, but I promise it relates. So the idea of like men and women together. So on my episode that I just dropped with Haru Spectra, we talked about this idea, which I've also talked about on the spaces many times, is that women are more naturally Sephirotic because of both physiological reasons, like they have like a womb, obviously. So that makes them inherently have more empty space than a man. Man doesn't have any empty space, but women are just more naturally Sephirotic. So there are metaphysical reasons as well. So it kind of makes sense because men are the path makers. We're the path workers and the path makers both. Well, depending on what kind of man you are. So you can be both, though. I would say we're mostly both. So it makes sense because we're more aggregated, we're denser. And I'm not saying like dumber, I'm saying denser. We're more rooted to some like material thinking. So where women are more related to intuition, not every woman, obviously. This people can break archetypes. We talk about this all the time. There are many different archetypes as well. There are not just a fixed like thing. It's not just like Joseph Campbell's perfect wheel of the hero. There are obviously 4 aeonic cycles, so there are multiple aeonic ideas within each cycle. So I haven't even broken it all down yet for like what I think, but I probably could map it out just like speculatively in a space, but not tonight, but one day maybe. And I probably did on the Anne of the Daughter Spaces. Who knows? It was like it was a very magical time for me. It was like very much like I was super exhausted, but I was like, I have to do this. Like you want to talk about, that's what I was thinking when Mike was talking about it, like fulfilling your purpose. Like I felt like I have to bring people together. I have to like meet other magicians. I'm not calling you a magician necessarily, Mike. It's a speculative, right? So but I have to meet other ones that are able to, or at least able to understand. They don't have to believe it, but they have to understand what I'm talking about and maybe think that actually I'm not full of shit and this whole idea is not full of shit. Because magic always happens in perception as well as in consent and in synthesis. So this goes back to the thing about the timeline. It's really interesting to me because I often see topics. I'm not saying that people choose topics based on what we talk about, although I've had a few trolls, so I don't know. I'm just being honest. Sometimes I feel like I get subtweeted. Sometimes I don't know, but I do see people talking about things that we've discussed, and they discuss it in much more like negative and fixed ways. And so that's why I was trying to say, like, you have to be an agent of your own will too. It's not just because I think that, and I think that the Aeonic idea is about that, and I do, be very clear. But I also think it's about being able to break it in real time. like Joshua was talking about, like forward thinkingness and like being here. Like being here is a little trauma. I'm not saying I'm traumatized or that I find it traumatizing like every day, but sometimes I do. I'm gonna be honest. Like I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of you see a lot of people crash out, like big, especially the bigger your account is, the bigger your crash out, the bigger your network, the bigger your friend group, the more you can crash out, right? Spiral. So the carnal ground is inherently kind of it's dangerous in a way. Not dangerous maybe physically, but dangerous psychically. So I think that that's why it's important to have a group that you connect with, people that you connect with, a sangha if you want to call it that, or like just a community of people that are you don't have to agree, but you have to try. And maybe that's also the thing about quote unquote the thing that we're not going to call the thing about the flames or whatever. The your true love, we'll call it true love. Okay, that's okay. I'm okay with that. True love with a V. So, hello, Seth. Hope you're doing quite well there, little Naga. I'll bring you up. But basically, yeah, I think that that's what it is. I'm sorry, Joshua. I didn't mean for you to lose your point. I think that we're doing something metamagical right now. And I think that we've been doing something metamagical the whole time. And I think that when you see people talking about things on the timeline, okay, so I'll give this specific thing. It was like another of those fucking age gap discourses. And I'm so tired of it. I'm like, people are very, some people are very rational and can actually like make like very healthy grown up decisions. I'm not saying I'm like the biggest grown up. I'm not. I'm just saying for certain things I could make very rational, informed, like human decisions. And it just seems like people want to like trot out like the worst of the worst at all times, and it's all about like degradation, keeping us in the Calvinist inclination. Yes, Mike, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for finishing your point because I just wanted to emphasize some of the things you were saying, and it is to have some type of tribe and support system, whether it's like direct or like just adjacent, is extremely important. And just navigating these different energies and navigating the world, like a lot of these things, it can be a little bit, it can be like a labyrinth sometimes, and knowing what to do sometimes. And uh, a lot of people can have success sometimes very early, and then they do something wrong and then they fail. And that's kind of like the lessons of Rahu, where it's like the mind gets so focused on success and like certain paths that it's like honing in on that like objective or that reward that's like right in front of you, but not, and then you get it, and then like the energy moves away and then you end up failing. So it's like success that leads to failure, and that's typically how like that figure is translated, like as like a geometric figure, like the, and then the key to is like loss that leads to like gains. And I just, it can be like a very tricky thing to navigate, and I find myself honestly constantly having to adjust things. And sometimes it can be a little bit scary because if you don't adjust it, and if you don't even have like the resources to know how to readjust, like sometimes I'm like, damn, if I didn't have this type of tool or something, like I would be fucked. And I say this all the time, and I shouldn't say it because like maybe I don't know, maybe like I would be fine in a different way. It's just not worried about, it's not worth getting worried about. Um, but it can be everything, and it just can be kind of fragile. And it's like you have to keep everything spinning all the time with Twitter, and it can be hard to keep up. So I can definitely understand like the higher you get, like you're gonna fall at some point. That's not a good thing to think about. But I think that's not something anyone here really has to worry about as much, because I think the things that we're doing are so early that there's so like we're literally just getting started talking about all this stuff. Like we're so early, it's like too early. It's actually almost like painful how early it is. And but that the good thing is that there's a lot more like momentum to build from here. A lot. So like a lot of the stupid things you see that are popular right now, like that shit is not going to be popular, or people are not going to be paying attention to as much like in the near future. But like this has a lot of room for growth, so that's nice.
I mean, that's the whole thing is like, I know you guys did a meetup, and so I mean, that's, if you want to, of course, that's a cool thing to do. I'm all in favor of that. And I think that, offline or online, it's about the connection. I've said this so many times, but I truly do believe it. And I think that it is fragile. Everything is so fragile, especially now. Everything feels extra fragile. Even I feel extra fragile. Yeah, I know. I know, Seth. Baddie. But it's not that I'm fragile. I'm not. I can take some DP. I can take some damage. I agree. I can take it. If I can dish it, I can take it, right? That's in equilibrium. That's a good master of the polarities. But the other reality is I do want to transition to some, not transition. I want to change to a different. No, I'm saying, Joshua, I'm saying I want to evolve beyond the timeline baddie, and I want to be more serious as a magician, and I want to be taken more seriously as a magician. That's what I was trying to say. Not necessarily as a magician per se, but just as someone who's in the sphere doing maybe interesting, as Mike was saying. Like, yeah, it is. And I said we're avant-garde. Like, we're avant-garde in the way people wish that they could be, but it's also the unfortunate position to be so ahead of the curve, because even if we never get credit for it, even if I never get credit for all my ideas, the reality is like we did pioneer some interesting and cool metaphysics, good Kabbalah, good Tantra. I'm not saying it's all perfect. I'm just saying we if you want to talk about Frater Achad, I know I made Mike look at Frater Achad's chart to see if I was truly his incarnation, which I still kind of believe I am, but I also agree that with Mike that is probably unlikely. But I just think it is funny because that whole group of the OTO in Vancouver, where I was born, interesting, was they were really obsessed with Sanskrit and really obsessed with these proto-Western Buddhist ideas. And so it took a Hapaborean, it took a fucking Hapaborean ninja who knew Buddhism, like knew Buddhism in a more magical way, like in a fundamentally esoteric way. So it took, because that's what they thought, right? Like they just didn't really understand. Like they didn't really get it. But because I kind of do get it, yeah, I was able to more think of it like more influx, more less fixed and less Sephirotic, more path working. Yes, Joshua. Sorry, go ahead.
I lost it, and I'm not writing things down tonight, so I'm not quite as sharp as usual. But I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. I'm sorry that I riffed for so long. Apologies.
Oh, I remembered. May I? You were talking about being a magi or mage, and I was thinking of how the three wise men, were the magi of Persia, had this relationship to the three stars in Orion's belt. Those are kind of known as the three magi. So perhaps you could. You mentioned stars earlier, were your preference. So I was just wondering if maybe you could refer to those sometime when thinking about magi's.
Well, actually, I actually love this idea of Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar, CMB, right? Christum, Mansionem, Benedictus. That's probably bad Latin, but that is the usual way that they write it, especially from Agrippa. As you all know, I think I've talked about it a million times, but I was really fond of Agrippa when I was 14. So basically, what they used to do in the medieval Catholic Church is they would hand out blessed chalk, but a more skillful means way, you could say, Joshua, which is what Agrippa talks about, is you hide a piece of chalk underneath the host, under some place on the altar. It's some secret place. I don't know how he did it, but he talks about it. He says he's hiding the chalk, and so then you have to go retrieve the chalk after mass. So then that's the chalk that you use, but you use this chalk to basically write above your threshold, the CMB, or you write out the names, or you write a specific seal, or I mean, there's different things. Different people have different ideas, right? But coming from a more folk Catholic idea, maybe you could say it's you do the CMB, and then you do like novenas to the Tres Magos, the three magi. That's something I would have done in the past and have probably done, maybe speculatively. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
Oh, man, uh, I think they do this during Epiphany. And the epiphany that it just occurred to me was that maybe when they're hiding the chalk in the altar, maybe that's kind of like when the kings were searching for the Christ child, right? So in this way, maybe the chalk is supposed to be analogous to the looking for the, the man child or whatever. And anyway, and then I was thinking too how similar this practice is to the Judaic Passover ritual of putting the lamb's blood on the door, because to me that's quite analogous.
I mean, it is, right? Because Christ is the sacrifice. So instead of the blood, maybe you do, well, you can, obviously, if you're Greek Orthodox, But I'm saying from a more maybe a normative Catholic perspective, yes. But also, like, the Epiphany is important still in the Catholic Church. It's like, yeah, the three magi do get, I think, mentioned in Mass, if I remember. It's been a long, long time since I was of that persuasion, but I believe that is true. And also, I mean, they're really interesting figures. Look, they're really popular in a lot of like Latin American countries. You see like a lot of people interested in like Puerto Rican Sanse. Sanse is not voodoo. Sanse is not Dominican, like 21 divisions. It's not Santeria. It's different. So, but they really, they're much more saint based. Like the saints may be stand ins for Orisha or whatever they want to call them, but they're usually not. So it's a little different in that way. So, but the three magi are considered to be like actual magicians. And so they are often propitiated for matters of magical workings or like patron saints of people who are ceremonial, in particular magicians. And just like they have the three gifts, well, one of the good gifts or one of the ways to work with them is to burn each of their gift. Now you're going to ask, how can you burn gold? Well, you burn calamus. So that's a little trick I'm giving you, or cinnamon, but maybe both together is good too. Although I always do three. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I didn't know that about the calamus because, yeah, I have lots and lots of frankincense and myrrh, but not so much gold. But for Christmas, a lot of times, because I don't celebrate Christmas, I would give people frankincense and myrrh. And of course, you get mixed reactions, doing that. But it's like, hey, maybe you should know about this. But anyway, I had a thought. Dang, that's really annoying. So that's why I like to take notes, because normally I forget things. Anyway, sorry about that.
Don't apologize. It's totally good. It happens to me when I get really, like, if I get really blazed. Yeah, sometimes it does happen. So, but I'm not doing that tonight. So, but, well, yeah, we'll close out in 2 minutes. I think that's the perfect time. We went for really good, like, 3 hour space. That's plenty. That gives people a lot to think about. I think we covered a really interesting and expansive, uh, I think we covered a breadth and a depth of Aeonic thinking and sort of like what is on the timeline and what we should maybe just maybe an idea, but just like the idea of Aeonic thinking, I think will really help people. And I think it's inherently positivistic. It will inherently help them build the paths rather than be stuck in fear. I know I'm not the perfect vehicle to say this, as I always say, but it is true. But I do think like it helps me a lot. I'll just say it like that. Yeah, Joshua, please go ahead.
I caught it. So that's so annoying. I like to practice holding thoughts though. But anyway, so they were Persian magi, right? So they would have been of the Zoroastrian persuasion, perhaps, or perhaps even Mithraism. And what I am so intrigued about with this story is they were not the quote chosen people, and yet Yahweh was dealing directly with them. And so that just goes to show how Because if they were totally repulsive to him, he wouldn't even deal with them, right? So there was something there for him to work with, in other words, and that, not to the point that they were so obedient that they sent an expeditionary force of mages to on a prophecy. Like the trail is thousands of miles, and so I just find that whole story remarkable, and that it required so much faith and accuracy because they're also following a heavenly body. We don't even really understand like what they're following, right? So there's a star attached to this story in general, and I think somehow they've kind of been made analogous to it. And I finally recalled the other thing I forgot. So those three stars comprise Orion's belt, and so I was curious if you had any belt references, because one that I can think of is with Norse. Thor had a belt that increased his strength. And of course, in powerlifting and weightlifting, at certain weights, you have to wear a belt to gird yourself, lest you have a hernia, right? So there is a very practical application for belts when men are doing vastly men things, where they might actually hurt themselves, right? So the belt in general, when I think of Orion's belt, I'm kind of thinking about like a powerlifter's belt, or maybe even like the WWE or whatever championship belt, something crazy like that, because it's designed to actually hold their guts in, right? And so when we think of these three magi saints, because they're not saints, but I agree they should be, because they were given dreams and everything too on the way to see the Christ child, and they were actually instructed not to tell Herod where he was. And so they had a clear connection. So I would interpret that as very clear pineal gland, perhaps, where they were dreaming and God was able to like interact with them and communicate with them and give them directions. And they obeyed, so I just wanted to riff on that a little bit.
No, I think this is an amazing story. I think that the holiday season is coming up. Obviously, Epiphany is a couple months away, but the three magi have always interested me. I'm not going to lie. I've always found them very fascinating, and I think that you touched on all the reasons why. So you're talking about the belt, but maybe I'll go in a little different direction, Joshua, and talk about that Orion is also known as the Archer. And so the Aeon is obviously the Aeon of the daughter is, well, as I posited, is also an archer. And so what is she? Where is the arrow pointing? So isn't the arrow pointing at the primordial truth? If the daughter is pink, much like Cassandra's PFP, then what does, then the pink is like the contour and the context to primordial truth. It's the crown, the like ineffable thing that arises within it. It's not necessarily and around it, but also within it. So, or from it even. So, yeah, I mean, I think that we've talked about that in that way. So I think if you look at Orion, and like, I'm not saying Orion's a hermaphrodite or anything like that. I'm saying that the archetypes can reappear and change and differ because really it's about like how you outline the stars. Okay, so if you look at Chinese astrology, for star astrology, they drew different shapes. They drew different animals. They did not see the stars the same as like everyone else or as like the other civilization, like the things. But the Persians were interesting because they kind of had a whole very like complex cosmology of ghosts and asuras and demons and gods and garudas and like worldly protectors. Like all of this later became like multiple different religions. Like esoteric Judaism owes a lot to Zoroastrianism. Buddhism, especially Tantric Buddhism, owes a lot to Zoroastrianism, like a lot of the thinking. And right, but like the one thing that I would disagree with the Zoroastrians is that yes, they did make the innovation, so it was very innovative of the time to say or stars above planets. I think that's probably better. That's obviously I agree with that more. But I think that they went wrong where they were like, just because our religion rejects the worship of the devas, meaning that we have to worship the asuras. But as we talked about in the chat literally the other day, it's so funny because Matt always says this. The things we talk about in chat always come up in interesting Kabbalistic ways in the spaces. So there is no Asura Tantra. Despite the many emails I've received asking me what I know about Asura Tantra, that I never write back to, by the way. But I'm just saying, there is no Asura Tantra. Asura Tantra is 100% tapasya. It's 110%. It's internal only. That's what the Zoroastrians knew. That was their secret. Flame worship. It was internal. Internal. Tumo, breathing, yoga, all the things that Avi talks about. You know, and you can. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but Avi has launched her yoga business, so please everybody check that out as well. But this is exactly like why we have diverse people in the lodge, because like it's all of the skills. It's like yes, maybe there are polymaths. I'm not saying I'm a polymath. I don't think of myself as that. I really don't. Solar's more of a polymath than me. Sachi's more of a polymath than me. Yes, I'm very smart. I agree, but I'm not a polymath. So. But I have a diverse interest, but I think that this is also the strength of like a group, is that you can like fill, like we were talking about with that thing we're never going to talk about, you can fill each other's weaknesses, but it doesn't necessarily mean weakness, it just means deficiency, right? Like I can't know intimately like what yoga is in like hatha yoga and like movement postures. Like yeah, I could practice it and I have, but I'm just saying that it's not like my fundamental thing. So so that's why you have other people, because they can help you sort of round out those like lesser known sort of things that you're not necessarily competent or comfortable in. So, and that's obviously why we do the spaces as co-hosts, and like why I think it's really important to shout out all those who aren't necessarily here, simply because it's like, yeah, we regardless of that I started it or whatever, but to me that's become like so much secondary to just like the sort of magic that I think is so much more powerful in consensus. And when I post Haru's episode later on the main, you'll see there's a quote that directly relates to this idea. So if you think I don't have any intentions with the quotes, wrong. I always do. Well, with that being said, we have 3 minutes. Yeah, okay, Mike and Joshua, why don't you, if you want to say any final words, I'll give you like allow, and Seth as well. And try and keep it short, and then we'll do quick room shout outs and then we'll go.
I'll go real quick just because I do have an interesting thought maybe to share. I rode a train a few weeks ago, and I got to thinking about how it was like the Zodiac, and the engine is like an Aries. And we normally associate Aries with a fast, explosive kind of energy, like a sprint or whatever. But in this case with trains, it's a slow burning coal type thing too, which we normally associate with like a Taurus or whatever, right? But so for me, it was just interesting to have that revelation of Aries in a sense of the embering coal that's being used to power the steam and stuff. So, I think of Aries as kind of like a steam engine in some regard now, more so than I did before. So I just wanted to share that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joshua. Appreciate that you came, despite the, your prior engagement. I really appreciate it. I obviously require all the boys that are co-hosts. Like, it really is important to me. Otherwise, I just go back to like, my show or whatever. But thank you so much. Obviously, Mike, if you want to say anything, please go ahead.
I'll just say that there's not really anything I want to say, but glad to be here tonight, and I had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a great time too. I really did. And like, obviously, shout out to Matt and Solar, of course. But I wish they would have been here. I know that they had things. It's totally. I mean, you guys all know now. It's like very flexible. Like we're just being flexible with each other. Obviously, I don't want to be abrasive. I don't want to like be a source of contention in any way. And so I just want you all to know that I appreciate you, that you come, that because it wouldn't happen, I wouldn't obviously do it. Obviously, Mike and I talked a little bit about numbers and like more hard stuff at the beginning. But it does matter to me that like we have a lodge, we have a group chat, like however active it is or not. I mean, it does matter to me because it's like it's not that I have to be popular on Twitter. That's become so meaningless. But the other reality is like, I mean, yeah, if my account grows, I won't be sad. But I'm just saying that I think fundamentally it is because people come, and like if people didn't come or thought my ideas were dumb and bullshit, and or thought that thought the hosts weren't good, because I had a lot of compliments. Like every time like people have come up, it's always been like, yeah, this person's great. Like have this person come more. I don't really listen to that like thinking. Like I always just do it on my own, quote unquote impulse, but that's how I am. I just choose the things that I do more in the spur of the moment. So that's how life kind of aligns for me. And that's like very chaotic at times, probably, but something kind of magic too. Plus ultra, baby. Love is the cause of knowledge. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to our Monty as well, Montgomery, Carlo, and Seth, obviously Bibliomancer, my little Naga. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming. Our other co-hosts, appreciate all of you. And you can check us out at thetruegraylodge.com, the true, TRVE, graylodge.com. Like and subscribe. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Really important. And yeah, thank you guys all so much. It's like been amazing, and it's been a huge learning curve. And I'm constantly learning, constantly being challenged. And yeah, we have to, I don't expect people to be my support, but I appreciate when they are. Yes, Dr. William Birkin, please go ahead. Please have the final word.
Oh, please don't forget to shout out.
Shit. Did you just cut out, Josh?
No. I was just reminding you. We normally do like a shout out for the folks in the room.
Oh, fuck. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. Robin, thank you for coming. Artist Robin. Check out Robin. Thank you, Joshua. I was smoking a lot at the end. It's okay. I lasted for quite a while. Avi, thank you so much. Of course, everybody check out Avi, who's also a lodge member, also on the website, and please check out her yoga business. Appreciate her very much. Thank you. Logi since day one. Cassandra, a content creator as well. Etsy store, purveyor of Kabbalistic, Gnostic, and fortune card and tarot and everything knowledge. I really like Cassandra. Cassandra and I we're vibes. We get it. And so thank you so much, Cassandra, for coming. Appreciate it. Also, my other brother, Zach, who is also my vibes. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming. And hopefully we'll get on Don sometime in the future. And yeah, I think, and thank you, Wall Enjoyer. Appreciate you. I don't know who you are. I think you're an alt, perhaps. I don't know. You guys know you drive me crazy with all the alt shit. I don't even get it. But anyways, I'm just a Luddite stuck in 2025. What can I say? The Scion. I was really meant to be born in like 1150 or something. Okay, so basically that's that. I appreciate you all. Despite your perhaps alt status, Wall Enjoyer, I do appreciate you. Thank you for coming. And to everyone, and to to the timeline and the psychic warriors, the temple of psychic warriors. Maybe that's a better word instead of temple of psychic youth, because I'm definitely not a youth. A Ute, as I spelled it on our episode, Zach, but with a V, obviously. But yeah, maybe that is what we are more, is we're like a temple of psychic warriors, and we're trying to figure it the fuck out and trying to figure out like what our archetypes are. And I think some of us know, but I'm saying for those of us who exist a little more in flux sometimes, the range between DPS and healing, perhaps, i.e., me, I think that it's sometimes it's a little harder. Sometimes it's a little harder to decide like what, are we gonna play for the baddies, or are we gonna, do something different? And I'm gonna choose secret third, I think, every time. 99, we'll say 99.33333% of the time, I will choose do something else, neither bad nor good, something gray. So I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you all so much. Everybody have a great night. Psychic soldiers, Anne of the Daughter, love is the cause of knowledge. Everything is luminousness and masslessness, empty in a word, and all contained by love. Have a great night.